Chapter 1498. The demon emperor took the lead and flew out. Then came the golden dragon guards and the others. Outside the city, the roar shook the earth as the army set off. They soared into the sky, their demonic aura filling the air as they tore the space apart and advanced towards the Blood Soul Mountain. Every expert of the demon race had an indescribable fanaticism on their faces. This day had finally arrived. After so many sacrifices, this day had finally arrived. Bound of universe, we are coming. All the saint kings and above tore the space apart at the same time. They followed the footsteps of the demon emperor. In fact, the main force of the demon race had already assembled tens of thousands of miles away from the Blood Soul Mountain. They were only waiting for the order. Today was the day to attack the bound of universe. With the demon emperor's order to attack, the sea region also began to actively cooperate. As the waves slowly rolled, mountains slowly emerged from the bottom of the sea and rose quickly, firmly blocking the thousands of miles of mountains that Yun Yang and the others had destroyed. The mountains continued to rise, gradually leveling with the surrounding mountains. The established waterway was repaired, causing the flow of water to increase by 30%. Countless dragons soared into the sky, creating clouds and rain, adding to the water power. A long roar shook the sky. The next moment, Prime Minister Turtle, who rarely moved, revealed his huge body and soared into the air. In the air, he lowered his head and said in a desolate voice, "Your Majesty, your subject bids farewell today." The Sea King had a complicated expression as he said, "Prime Minister, it may not come to that. There is enough seawater now." A faint smile appeared on Prime Minister Turtle's face as he said, "There was originally enough seawater, but unfortunately, the bound of universe has destroyed a lot of it during this period of time. Not only has the new seawater been lost, but even the original stock has been lost by a third. If we don't go to extremes, I'm afraid the sea race won't be able to make this trip." The Sea King let out a long sigh. "Your subject will use this life to help my Majesty and the sea race." Prime Minister Turtle nodded and no longer looked at the boundless sea. He turned his head and his huge body rose higher and higher. The Ministry of Housing went to a higher place above the thousands of dragons. With a long roar, endless hurricanes howled and clouds gathered for tens of thousands of miles. Heavy rain poured down. Prime Minister Turtle, who was aiding the rain, was not done yet. He was using his innate magical power, the heavenly pillar. When a cultivator cultivated to the extreme, they would be able to form the Dharma of the world and hold up the sky with one hand. However, for people like Prime Minister Turtle, their bodies were connected to the world. In the dark clouds, Prime Minister Turtle's 4 legs were like 4 pillars that reached the sky. They extended down from the sky and reached the ground. However, all the water in the entire universe flowed over and merged into the dark clouds, turning into a downpour. Amidst the unprecedented rain that seemed like the collapse of the sky, the 10 mountains that were connected to the Blood Soul Mountain, which were originally lifeless ice mountains, suddenly emitted thick smoke. A volcano eruption? Dongfang Haoran and the others felt a chill run down their spines when they saw this. Yesterday was the official day of the World Annihilation Strategy. Everyone had expected that the World Annihilation Strategy would not be completed in a single day, so it was not a big deal to extend it to today. The longer they delayed it, the better it would be for the human race's strategy. It would be best if they could delay it for 5 or 6 days. However, the situation of these 10 volcanoes erupting at the same time was beyond everyone's expectations and they were caught off guard. It was not that they did not look for active or dead volcanoes that had once emitted smoke. After all, once a volcano erupted, the destruction would only be worse. However, these 10 mountains in front of them had been snow mountains for hundreds of thousands of years. Just the amount of snow on the mountains was immeasurably thick. In everyone's understanding, these mountains were connected to the Blood Soul Mountain and were inseparable. Not to mention anything else, just the fact that many places were covered in mystical ice that was difficult to form without 1,000 or 10,000 years of frost was enough to explain the problem. Whether it was Dongfang Haoran or the other 3 rulers or Yun Yang, they had long treated these mountains as a natural barrier that was similar to the Blood-Soul Mountain, a protective force on their side. But now, they were appearing in the form of volcanoes and even began to spew lava and flames. This was not just unexpected, it was an unexpected event that could not be guarded against. And when this unexpected event occurred, other than catching everyone off guard, it also created an unimaginable disaster. Calm down. Dongfang Haoren's forehead was covered in sweat, but his expression was calm as he commanded, "Everyone, do not panic. The changes in these mountains are only ordinary volcanic activity. At most, it will cause some disturbance, not enough to affect the Blood-Soul Mountain. Even if the mountain is gone, it does not lead to the human side, so it has no effect on the grand plan. Everyone, maintain your position and continue to pay close attention to the demon race's movements." The rain continued to pour. Seeing the flood dragons in the sky, Beigong Liuli, Shimen Fangfu, Python Jiu, Dong Qitian, and the others moved in unison. They leaped up and rushed towards the clouds, obviously wanting to kill these flood dragons and slow down the flow of the water. Unfortunately, the group had only just begun to move when the boundless lightning in the sky struck down without any fuss. Its target was the group, and the flood dragons were not affected at all. This was another effect of the Turtle Minister activating his innate ability. Activating his innate ability consumed a lot of energy, using up 10,000 years of his lifespan to activate the sky-piercing pillar. But while he was activating his innate ability, the entire world was his territory and all the wind and thunder in the world were under his control. If he used up his lifespan and still could not achieve his goal, then the Turtle Minister would suffer an unpredictable consequence. But during this period of time, no external force could interrupt him. Thus, even with the three hegemons' cultivation bases, the moment they made contact with the clouds, they were struck down by the thick bolts of lightning. Their efforts were in vain. Seeing this scene, everyone's expression changed and their eyes were filled with shock. After all, in the eyes of the majority of the people on their side, the four rulers led by Dongfang Haoren were the strongest fighting force on their side. With them working together, they should have been able to win. Who would have thought that the moment they moved, the halberd would break and sink into the sand, dying prematurely? The Turtle Minister was a peak saint. The ultimate move of burning his own soul made Dongfang Haoren and the others helpless. The rain was like a heavenly river flowing into the human world. The waves are quickly moving. Hu Xiaofan's hearing was the best. Although he was at the back, he could still hear the roaring of the sea. Hung, 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 the 10 volcanoes erupted at the same time as if they were waiting for the rain. Endless lava, like a fire dragon, soared into the sky from the top of the mountain, and then smashed down heavily. Following this was a landslide that shook the heavens. Lava flowed everywhere like a river. Wherever it passed, even the snowy mountains that had not melted for tens of thousands of years and the mysterious ice that was said to be indestructible were all turned into nothingness in an instant, not to mention the endless mudslides that were rolling down. Dongfang Haoren and the others looked at the vast ocean of water that mixed with the mudslides rushing down from the snowy mountains towards the sea. They felt powerless and helpless. This was especially true on the human side. "Everyone, calm down." Dongfang Haoren shouted, "This is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. The demon calamity will turn into a natural calamity. Everyone, go to your posts and defend your positions. Even if you are hit, you are not allowed to lose your position." Dongfang Haoren felt his throat go dry and his eyes were bloodshot. He clearly knew that this was just the beginning. It had not even officially begun. The power of the monster race's world extermination strategy had not arrived yet. The tsunami of the sea race was still brewing. When these two powers gathered together, it would be the true test and disaster. The torrential rain continued and there seemed to be a huge hole in the sky. The endless water of the heavenly river flowed into the human world. Now, there was the melting of the snowy mountains that had not melted for tens of thousands of years. What kind of power would the sea race display to increase the degree of this disaster? Dongfang Haoren could not care about anything else. Standing at the mouth of the blood-soul beast, he looked in the direction of the monster race. He had a premonition. It's coming. It's coming. The true test was about to come. Python 9 was smashed back by the lightning and he immediately gave the order, Tian Fa Xian beasts, advance 500 li. Show your true form, battle form, everyone prepare for battle. Python 9 had clearly made preparations for the worst. If the Blood Soul Mountain was broken and the seawater flowed in, then the Tian Fa Xian beasts would use their huge bodies to fill up the gap. Even if they had to sacrifice their lives, they would block it back. The seawater was rising at a speed visible to the naked eye. The waves became more and more violent. Countless members of the sea race revealed their true forms in the sea, stirring up the waves. Their huge bodies and vast demonic energy forcefully stirred up the seawater, brewing again and again. Wave after wave, it became more and more forceful, but it was not violent. It was like boiling a frog in warm water, continuously stirring up the seawater, turning the entire sea into raging waves. The only obstacle was the Blood Soul Mountain. Their only target was also the Blood Soul Mountain. The sea race was waiting, accumulating their strength. Once the seawater rose to a level that they thought was acceptable, they would immediately unleash the most extreme wave attack. And at this time, there was a flash in the sky, and a towering giant suddenly appeared in the sky. Endless lightning flashed across his body, illuminating his face. Lord Supreme Cloud. It's Lord Supreme Cloud. Master. It's Sect Leader Master. The humans were overjoyed to see the sudden appearance of Supreme Cloud. It was Yin Yang who had soared into the sky with the Dharma of heaven and earth. The divine edge was unleashed at full force, sweeping from east to west. The saber light turned into countless rays of saber light that sliced through the sky. The bodies of the flood dragons fell from the sky in pieces, howling in pain. Yin Yang did not show any mercy, nor did he stop. He did not even bother to collect their inner cores. He just charged forward, killing everything in his path. Yin Yang had displayed his ultimate strength, his highest cultivation base, without holding anything back. To these beginner-level and high-level Saint Realm flood dragons, wherever the divine edge passed, their souls were annihilated, their bodies and spirits destroyed. One of the flood dragons was grabbed by the dragon tail with his free hand and straightened it. He used it as a long whip and smashed it in the air. Dragon scales were smashed all over the place. Chapter 1499. The countless lightning bolts that gathered in the sky were all controlled by him with the power of Xian thunder, and he used it to counterattack the flood dragon. There were even more lightning bolts that were gathered by him, forming a huge thunder ball that smashed towards Prime Minister Turtle with a ferocious momentum. Old Turtle stood tall and firm, allowing Yin Yang to bombard him as he pleased. There was not a single scratch on his body that connected heaven and earth. He continued to summon the ominous clouds, guiding the rain from the universe to pour more and more violently into the ocean, fueling the flow of the water. Lord Supreme Cloud. It's alright if you hit me. Hit me as much as you want, I won't mind at all. Prime Minister Turtle's gigantic head spoke in human language. This is my life's only pursuit, the last battle of my life, a glorious battle. After this battle, regardless of the outcome, there will be no more Old Turtle in this world. Prime Minister Turtle smiled peacefully. Lord Supreme Cloud, you have your pursuit, your protection. This Old Turtle has my own dream and shelter as well. To be able to assist in this apocalyptic battle in this lifetime is more than enough. Amidst Yun Yang's silent and relentless bombardment, Prime Minister Turtle howled into the sky. A ray of light shot out from his mouth, piercing through the void and into the vast universe. The amount of rain that fell had actually increased, at least 20% more than before. In spite of this, spots of white light appeared on Prime Minister Turtle's body as well. Prime Minister Turtle. Yin Yang said angrily, when this white light covers your body, it'll be the end of your life. It'll be too late even if you regret it. When that time comes, you'll perish, unable to reincarnate and vanish from this world forever. Have you lived for hundreds of thousands of years just for a momentary show-off? If you stop now, I'll let you live. Prime Minister Turtle guffawed, his voice reverberating in the air. Lord Supreme Cloud is right. I've lived for hundreds of thousands of years just to die today. To die here. To let future generations see the bound of universe's scenery, to taste the flesh and blood of the bound of universe's humans. This is the greatest wish of my life. Ha ha ha. You're courting death. Damn you. Yin Yang hollered and whipped out his purple jade flute, channeling all his strength to summon the art of slaughtering the world once again. This time, it was focused on a single point and poured all of it onto Prime Minister Turtle's shell. Boom. The entire world seemed to tremble. Puff. Prime Minister Turtle opened his mouth and spat out a torrent of blood like a river, but he was still laughing. Such strength. Lord Supreme Cloud is impressive indeed. To be able to injure me when I'm merging with heaven and earth. Unfortunately, I can still take at least 3 more blows like this. I wonder how many more times Supreme Cloud can do it. What about that attack just now? What Prime Minister Turtle said was true. He had burned his soul, origin soul, and inner core. Prime Minister Turtle's current state was already at the pinnacle of this world. If Yin Yang's own ability had not reached the pinnacle of this world, in addition to the purple jade flute support and the extreme art of slaughtering the world, it would be difficult to shake him. However, even with Yin Yang's ability, it was already his limit to execute such a ferocious attack twice. A third strike would exhaust his energy, but to break the Prime Minister Turtle's defense, he would need at least 4 more strikes. Based on this, even if Yin Yang managed to break the Prime Minister Turtle's defense regardless of the cost, he would inevitably be exhausted. How would he deal with the subsequent battles? At this moment, even with Yin Yang's intelligence and decisiveness, he had fallen into a dire situation. Chirp chirp, a crisp chirp of a bird rang out as a small, fiery red shadow shot out from Yin Yang's embrace. The red shadow was none other than Gigi. When the Turtle Prime Minister opened his mouth to speak, Gigi rushed into the river of blood in the Turtle Prime Minister's mouth like a bolt of lightning. It was like a moth flying into a flame, jumping into a sea of fire. There was no obstruction at all as it rushed into the Turtle Prime Minister's stomach. Prime Minister Turtle was stunned for a moment before he smiled and said, "Is this Lord Supreme Cloud's backup? I know that Lord Supreme Cloud has a strange bird that can devour the Phoenix King's Nirvana fire. However, although this bird is mystical, its cultivation base is low. I've rarely used it, but its cultivation base is at the pinnacle of Saint's level. My body has long formed its own universe. Even if a high-level Saint were to enter my body, he would be refined by me. It's a pity for this mystical bird." Yin Yang did not answer. Instead, he turned the purple jade flute into a mountain-like weapon and smashed it down once more. Even an extreme move like, "So what if I slaughter the entire world," was useless against it. He could only hope that Prime Minister Turtle was just bluffing and exaggerating. Boom! Prime Minister Turtle let out a low grunt, but his limbs were still supporting the sky and the earth. He said leisurely in a composed manner, "Lord Supreme Cloud, you have 2 more chances. After these 2 times, even if you don't hit me, I'll disappear. The human race has heroes, how can the demon race not have any ambitious ones? Let this old man be the demon race's hero in this battle. The water flow is enough." Prime Minister Turtle threw his head back and guffawed, looking heroic. It was completely different from the wretched demeanor he had seen in the past. Yin Yang knew very well that the Prime Minister Turtle's words were true. He was using his life as the price for the demon race's chance of winning this battle. Yin Yang needed at least 2 more attacks to end this man. However, the result of his forceful attack was that he would be completely drained. Just like what Prime Minister Turtle had said, the water flow was enough. Was it worth it for him to pay the price of being completely drained and unable to fight anymore? At this moment, something unexpected happened. Prime Minister Turtle, who had been calm all this while, suddenly let out a miserable cry. "What? What is this?" those who were watching the scene were dumbfounded, unable to believe what they had just witnessed. The turtle chancellor's four towering legs had disappeared without a trace, and the turtle chancellor had reverted to his original appearance of an elderly man. Trembling, his face pale, he looked at Yun Yang and asked, "Supreme Cloud, what kind of bird is that strange bird?" Yun Yang's heart was sweating profusely at the question. He did not know what kind of bird Gigi was either. Of course, he could not say that he did not know. Instead, he feigned indifference and said, "How does Prime Minister Turtle, who has everything under control, feel now? Does it feel good?" Prime Minister Turtle chuckled bitterly. 280,000 years of cultivation base gone in a day. How can it not feel good? It's a pity that despite Supreme Cloud's meticulous planning, there are still mistakes. Your bird has only consumed my soul but not my internal core. Suddenly, he stood in the air and hollered, his voice hoarse. Yun Yang's expression changed as he hollered, "Come out quickly." In the blink of an eye, Prime Minister Turtle's body exploded. The power was incomparably ferocious and terrifying. At the very last moment before the Prime Minister Turtle triggered his self-destruction, a red shadow shot out from his mouth and disappeared into Yun Yang's embrace. In the next moment, in the next instant, the power of Prime Minister Turtle's self-detonation came chasing after him. This was the extreme self-destruction of a pinnacle saint. His life, remnant soul, internal core, and physical body were all part of this explosion. The power of this explosion should be above that of the Falcon Emperor's self-destruction. However, although his self-destruction was shocking, it did not cause any damage. It was just that after the self-destruction, a giant tortoise shadow that was more than 10 times larger than the previous one suddenly appeared in the sky. The gigantic tortoise wandered freely in the air, its illusory gaze trained on Yun Yang as it said with a smile, "Lord Supreme Cloud, you've predicted the enemy's moves indeed. You've really taken care of this old tortoise with 2 preemptive strikes. I'm impressed." Then, the gigantic tortoise disappeared without a trace, returning to the boundless dark clouds in the sky. However, the storm did not stop with the Prime Minister Turtle's demise. It continued to fall. It was getting heavier and heavier. Yun Yang cast his manifestation powers once again, stirring up a hurricane to stir the clouds and forcefully divert the water. However, the dark clouds formed by the gigantic tortoise shadow could not be dealt with even by his manifestation powers. He could only watch as the storm continued to fall. Obviously, this was the result of Prime Minister Turtle's final self-destruction. It was unshakable. In spite of this, the Prime Minister Turtle himself disappeared from the world forever. A pinnacle saint of the Sea clan had fallen. He was also the first ace expert to perish in this ultimate war between the two clans. The tides suddenly surged, but it was not because of Prime Minister Turtle's shackles but because someone else had arrived. Neptune's voice came through gritted teeth, "Supreme Cloud. You killed my Prime Minister Turtle." Yun Yang hollered, "Not only him, I also want to kill you. Do you dare to show yourself? If you dare to come, I will kill you too." Yun Yang's words were half a threat and half a provocation. Neptune had been severely injured previously. Even with the help of the primordial dragon and phoenix fire, his vitality was still greatly damaged and his combat power was diminished. Without the oceanic divine staff in hand and the perishable arrow in hand, if he dared to show himself, Yun Yang would definitely kill him. Neptune was not fooled, however. He howled at the sky, "Break through the bound of universe and leave no one alive. I will wait for you." Yun Yang's eyes were overflowing with murderous intent. Now, the waves were still accumulating power in a cycle, obviously waiting for something. It was undeniable that the longer they waited, the more seawater there was, and the higher the chance of breaking through the bloody Soul Mountain. Under the full force of the Sea Clan, the waves had drowned the Fox Emperor city. 300 Janissaries were stationed in the middle of the bloody Soul Mountain. The entire Fox Emperor city had completely turned into a swamp. If one were to look across the sea, they would find that it was a beach that spanned thousands of miles, extending all the way to the depths. Moreover, there was a mountain range that was rushing over here. Obviously, this was the real trump card of the Sea clan. They had come to collect the sea. They had compressed their survival range to the greatest extent, cutting off all means of retreat, just to break through the bound of Universe's barrier. The flood dragons in the air were mostly slaughtered by Yun Yang as if he was venting his anger. The few that were left were also scared out of their wits and fell into the sea below, not daring to come out again. Yun Yang swept back and forth on the surface of the sea, the powerful aura of a half-step into the starry sky killing countless lower cultivation base members of the Sea clan. He came and went without stopping. In less than an hour, the number of Sea clan members that had been killed by Yun Yang had already exceeded millions. However, the seawater had risen to a shocking level. Chapter 1500. Faced with such a situation, Sea Emperor had no choice but to order all the members of the sea to dive 10,000 feet below the water surface. At this distance, Yun Yang's aura could not withstand it. The corpses of the members of the sea who had been killed by Yun Yang had already formed a thick layer on the surface of the sea. Thousands of feet-long sea snakes, octopuses, and giant sharks could be seen everywhere. The number of casualties pained Sea Emperor to the core. These were all experts at manipulating water from the Sea clan who had stirred up trouble, but they had died before they could achieve anything. He could only sigh helplessly. Supreme Cloud, do you only know how to attack the weak? Yun Yang scolded him righteously, Bullsh *T. Which eye of yours saw me attack them? Left eye, right eye, or lower eye? I was only flying here and there. Is it worth it for me to kill them with their insignificant cultivation base? Are you people of the sea thinking too highly of yourselves, or are you looking down on me? Sea Emperor was so angry that he was about to flip his stomach. Nonsense. You're bullying the weak. Shameless. Utterly shameless. Yun Yang chuckled coldly. If you're not satisfied, you can come up and take revenge. If you don't dare to do it alone, you can gather your subordinates and attack me together. I'll wait for you here. Come up. If you don't dare to come up and fight, Sea Emperor, do you only know how to talk big? The Sea Emperor really did not dare to do so. With Yun Yang's astounding capabilities and his current condition, he would only be courting death if he went up. Even if he attacked as a group, it would be difficult for them to defeat Yun Yang. They would only be sending more of the Sea tribe's high-level combat power to their deaths. Therefore, Sea Emperor could only continue scolding Yun Yang without any qualms. Suddenly, Sea Emperor in the sea and Yun Yang in the sky stopped provoking each other at the same time and turned to look at the other side of the coastline. There seemed to be a huge commotion coming their way over there. As Yun Yang turned to look, he saw a flash of white light amidst the dark clouds on the horizon, approaching from afar. Following that, a huge spatial crack appeared. The white flame from afar rushed out of the spatial crack with a boom. Yun Yang focused his gaze and saw that the white flame was a gigantic phoenix. Upon closer inspection, it was the true form of a phoenix. Was it the Phoenix Emperor? Yun Yang focused his gaze and saw that the Phoenix Emperor was bleeding from her 7 orifices, looking extremely horrifying. As soon as he came out, he shouted, "Sea race, drum wave." In the next moment, an awe-inspiring white light floated out from his body. Yun Yang's expression changed abruptly. He'd clearly sensed that even though the white light seemed to be inconspicuous, it actually contained hidden might, and it actually possessed the strength to annihilate him. A wise man does not stand under a collapsing wall. In a flash, Yun Yang was already hundreds of thousands of feet high in the sky. The white light slowly fell along the coast, moving towards the Blood Soul Mountain. It seemed to be moving slowly, but in fact, it was extremely fast. Everywhere it passed, regardless of whether it was the ground or the ocean, a layer of white light condensed. It was filled with a pure and holy feeling, untainted by even a speck of dust. Even the torrential mudslide would be sealed the moment it came into contact with it. The more Yun Yang watched, the more frightened he became. He dared not act recklessly, watching as the white light entered the Crimson Soul Mountain and began to spread within the mountain. Yun Yang suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. At this moment, his heart actually stopped beating. A great sense of danger that he'd never felt before suddenly assaulted his heart. With a sudden thought, he shouted without care, "Everyone on the Crimson Soul Mountain, leave immediately. Immediately." His voice was like a thunderclap, deafening to the ears, causing the entire world to tremble. Dongfang Haoran, who was presiding over the battle on the Crimson Soul Mountain, looked over in confusion. Why? Dongfang Haoran. The people of the Crimson Soul Mountain, leave immediately. Tear through space and leave. Yin Yang roared with all his might, quickly. Quickly. Seeing Yin Yang lose his composure and become so flustered, even though the four rulers did not know what accident had happened, they had already realized that some terrible danger was about to befall them. For a moment, the hearts of the four all stopped beating. In the next moment, he turned his head without hesitation and ordered, "Leave. Leave. Quickly." Just as the order was given, he had already turned into a gust of wind, a long rainbow, quickly sweeping up all the human experts who had not yet reacted. Many of the Saint Monarchs reacted and immediately left, tearing through space and leaving the Crimson Soul Mountain, but there were even more people who did not react in time, and there were even many who were resting in the caves, preparing for battle. They were still confused, not knowing what had happened. However, their instincts as martial artists were also telling them that danger was approaching, a terrifying crisis that was enough to kill them was about to descend. Yin Yang descended from the sky like a bolt of lightning, quickly turning into a cloud of wind and clouds, sweeping up the Fox Empress and the others, and then the 300 personal guards, as well as the 70 or so human experts who had just rushed out of the caves but could not escape in time. He swept them up into the air, tore through space, and threw them in. This was already the limit of what he could do. When he turned around again, wanting to try to sweep up the last wave of over 200 people who had just rushed out of the caves, the white light had already broken through the Crimson Soul Mountain and shot up into the sky. Yin Yang, who was too close, was immediately affected and screamed. Although he tried his best to soar into the sky, he still suffered from the corrosion. When he was high up in the sky, blood spurted out from all 7 orifices at the same time, and he was injured both internally and externally. Looking down, he was shocked to see that his left foot was actually gone. As a pinnacle expert who was half a step into the starry sky, his left foot had actually been melted by the white light for a moment. If the other cultivators were to come into contact with it, how could they still have a good ending? Yin Yang swallowed 2 streams of qi of life and hurriedly accelerated his left foot, but there was still lingering fear in his heart. If he had been a step slower, he might really have died under the surprise attack of the white light. This white light was actually so sharp. Whether it was the Crimson Soul Mountain that had the support of the starry sky or the pinnacle expert who was half a step into the starry sky. Was this the power of the world annihilation strategy? Yes, the world annihilation white light had officially begun to show its power. In the blink of an eye, the white light covered the entire Crimson Soul Mountain from the bottom up. All the human experts who were still on the Crimson Soul Mountain and could not escape in time, about 200 people, had all turned into a pool of blood in an instant. Not even a single bone was left behind. More than 200 Saint Monarch experts. They had all fallen without a sound. Dongfang Haoran, who had escaped a step earlier, stood high up in the sky, looking at the blood flowing quietly on the Crimson Soul Mountain. He only felt a buzzing sound in his head. His entire person was stunned. Stunned. Just a moment ago, they were still standing there with a bewildered expression. In the next moment, they had already turned into flowing blood. They were all people with lofty ideals who did not hesitate to die for the human race. They had resisted the invasion of the human race for thousands of years. They had already determined their fate, to be buried on this Crimson Soul Mountain. No one would have thought that their final destination, their final death, was not in battle, but because of a wrong command, they had lost their lives. Yes, Yin Yang had reminded them. It was best for all the people stationed on the Crimson Soul Mountain to withdraw. Once the power of the demon race's world annihilation stratagem was over, then they could leave or stay. But Dongfang Haoran did not want to give up this strategic stronghold, so he withdrew a portion and left a portion. When he stayed, Dongfang Haoran remembered saying, "If I stay here, I don't know how strong the world annihilation stratagem is, but it is very likely that I will die under this power, so I won't force it." At the time, everyone was laughing. For humanity. For the bound of yellow. What harm is there in dying? We have been stationed here for many years, we have long disregarded life and death. It doesn't matter, if you die, then you die. At most, remember to burn some incense for us when the time comes. Everyone's laughter seemed to still be ringing in his ears. Dongfang Haoran had fiercely slapped his own face twice. Tears flowed freely. "Brother," the white light paused for a moment. Then, with a loud bang, under the dumbfounded gazes of all the humans, the Crimson Soul Mountain that had guarded the bound of yellow for millions of years, this indestructible barrier that separated humans and demons, this immortal mountain that contained the power of the universe's powerhouses, had been punctured like a balloon. But the balloon that had been punctured still had remnants. The Crimson Soul Mountain had turned into nothingness, not even a single piece of stone remained. The entire mountain turned into quicksand and flowed down with a swoosh sound. Half of it flowed to the bound of yellow, the other half flowed to the demon realm. The natural stronghold of the Crimson Soul Mountain had disappeared in an instant, it had disappeared without a trace. The entire world was silent. Including the Sea Emperor, the Sea Race, and even the Phoenix Emperor who had been mentally prepared, they were all stunned. They had imagined this scene appearing thousands of times, but, when it really happened in front of them, the Phoenix Emperor was still stunned. What kind of great power was this? It was actually so horrifying and terrifying to the extreme. The demon race. The entire demon league. The cause that they had worked hard for hundreds of thousands of years, the goal that they had worked hard for, today, it was like a soap bubble had burst, disappearing in front of them. It had come true. The Crimson Soul Mountain had completely turned into quicksand. The Phoenix Emperor couldn't help reaching out and scooping up a handful of fine sand that flowed past him. He placed it in front of his eyes and looked at it again. Very, very fine sand. Rather than saying it was sand, it was more like powder. No, it wasn't powder, it was fine powder. Because it was already so fine that it was like a speck of dust, the tentacles seemed to be non-existent. The entire mountain instantly disintegrated, as if the sky was collapsing and the earth was sinking, and then, after burying him, it further disintegrated without a trace. The Phoenix Emperor suddenly looked up. Looking at the flat Crimson Soul Mountain in front of him, his eyes were filled with a dazzling light. The two main goals of my life have been achieved today. The goal that I had worked hard for 20,000 years has been achieved today. The Phoenix Emperor felt the wild power in his body, barely managing to stand in the air. Seeing the Crimson Soul Mountain collapse, the usually calm Phoenix Emperor couldn't help crying. Chapter 1501. The Phoenix Emperor's body swayed and swayed, as if he could not control his own body. His face bled from all orifices. His entire body was splitting open. Blood flowed everywhere, and when it landed on the ground, it became a raging fire. He was not injured, but his body almost exploded from the violent power. At this moment, the power was still increasing. Yes, he had reserved 10% of the world annihilation stratagem's power for himself. He had studied this 10% for 20,000 years. He thought he could withstand it, but he did not expect the world annihilation stratagem to be so powerful that his current body could not withstand it at all. 10% was not enough. I can only absorb 5% at most, and that would increase my power by more than 20 times. But the other 5% must be released as soon as possible. The Phoenix Emperor swayed and fell from the sky. He could not withstand it anymore. The Ocean Emperor gave an order from afar, raging tide rise, the sea, at this moment, surged like never before. All the members of the Sea Clan acted as if they were ready to risk their lives after the order was given. They directly unleashed all their demonic energy. Following the order, they pushed the seawater in the same direction, raising the tide. All the sea beasts, sea monsters, and sea demons at the bottom of the sea surfaced, trying their best to guide the tide. The tide became more and more violent, and the height of the tide was already 70,000 zhang high. And this was not the peak, it was still accumulating power. The last wave. The Ocean Emperor roared, his face ferocious. As expected, it was the last wave. It was also the last wave. All the seawater in the sea was moved by the Sea Clan, and with the momentum of overturning the sea, pushing the mountain forward. Yes, there was no need to push now, the mountain was gone, and the endless seawater rushed towards the Blood Soul Mountain that was now flat. 10,000 zhang high was usually an exaggeration, but today, at this moment, it was 10,000 zhang high, sweeping the heavens and earth. This scene was seen by the mysterious yellow camp, 500 li away. Everyone could clearly see that the Sea Clan's wave was already as high as the blue sky. Demonic wind howled along with it. The vanguard of the Demon Emperor's army had already reached the Blood Soul Mountain. Looking at the collapsed Blood Soul Mountain, the Spirit Demon Emperor was overjoyed. Pass down my order, the attack begins. There was no time to wait for the demon race's billions of troops to move together. They had to attack immediately. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The bound of universe was right before their eyes and within their reach. Unify the demons in the air, land, and sea. He was the greatest demon emperor since the birth of the demon realm. Now, even the human regions were going to be brought into the palm of his hand, unifying them all. Not only do I want to be the demon emperor, I want to be the overlord of the entire world. The one and only. The Phoenix Empress was indeed impressive. She actually used the apocalyptic white light to destroy the Blood Soul Mountain in an instant. I'll give you a great merit. For a moment, the Demon Emperor was filled with satisfaction and in high spirits. At this moment, the excitement in his heart had reached an uncontrollable level. Even his breathing was a little hurried, and his white hair was fluttering. The Golden Dragon Grand Elder immediately answered, yes. He then looked at the Spirit Demon Emperor worriedly and said softly, Your Majesty, you shouldn't tire yourself out too much. There are some things you can just instruct us to do. The Demon Emperor frowned and shouted, Imminent peril, eternal hegemony. What are you waiting for? Right now, I am full of energy and have endless energy. How can I be tired? I want to personally lead the army to the front lines and completely destroy the Blood Soul Mountain, establishing the eternal hegemony of the demon realm. Hurry up and pass on the order. The Golden Dragon Grand Elder's expression became unprecedentedly respectful and fervent, and he even had a strong urge to kneel down and worship. The Demon Emperor really didn't have it easy. For the sake of this day, the Demon Emperor had worked hard, poured in blood, and racked his brains. Look at his head, it was all white, snow white. Even his entire face had become old and skinny, even the vitality in his body could be felt diminishing, decreasing, and disappearing rapidly, but he still had to work so hard, so forward, as expected of. The Golden Dragon Grand Elder was just about to pass on the order when he suddenly stopped. Something didn't seem right. Yesterday morning, the Demon Emperor still had a head full of black hair, and it was full of vitality. Why did it change so much now? Not only had the color of his hair become snow white, but it was also like withered grass, without any trace of vitality. Also, why did the Demon Emperor look so haggard? Yesterday morning, he was clearly mature and charming, and full of vigor. Also, what's with the state of his vitality? Even I can feel it, it's not fake. What's going on? Could it be that the Demon Emperor was really racking his brains for the demon realm, and completely did not notice his own state? The Golden Dragon Grand Elder almost shed tears. It was really too touching. Pass on the Demon Emperor's order, attack with full force. Take down the Heaven Realm. He shouted the order. Upon hearing the order, the Demon Realm army rose into the air like a tidal wave, and followed behind the huge tidal wave. The Demon Emperor took the lead, and quickly rushed to the front. The Demon Emperor of all ages, to conquer the Heaven Realm, the supreme achievement was all on this day. Huge waves surged and rolled over. The entire sky was filled with seawater and the demon realm. As the demon emperor had said, today was the day to destroy the heaven realm. On the other side, Dongfang Haoran, Shimen Fengfu, Beigong Liuli, and the others saw the situation change, and their eyes all turned red. Things were clearly developing in the worst direction. The worst. There was no other. According to everyone's expectations, even if the world-extinguishing stratagem was successful and the mighty power of the Blood Soul Mountain was broken, causing the Blood Soul Mountain to collapse, there would still be a process of the mountain collapsing, and there would still be a portion of the mountain left behind, right? With the size of the Blood Soul Mountain, even if the mountain collapsed, the remaining rocks would still be enough to stop the enemy, giving them enough time to react. But they never imagined that the white light would be so tyrannical. Not only did it destroy the mighty power of the stars that had existed for countless years, it also caused the entire Blood Soul Mountain to completely turn into smoke. The sturdy and majestic Blood Soul Mountain, the indestructible Blood Soul Mountain, was like a soap bubble, an illusion, gone. And it was all in an instant, in the blink of an eye, it was all gone. This matter caused Dongfang Haoran and the others to feel disbelief, and their minds to collapse. The natural stronghold had completely turned into a path. And it was such a wide path, using it as a path to attack and adding on the fact that everyone was rushing in, how could they resist? Just thinking about it was enough to make one despair. But even if they couldn't resist, they still had to resist. Since we're guarding this place, aren't we already prepared to die? If the monster race really rushed in, humanity would be finished. Charge. Charge. At all costs. Block for me. Die. We will also die here. Dongfang Haoran roared, his throat almost emitting smoke. All the experts of the three heavenly palaces quickly reacted. The first wave spread out, and under the leadership of the three palace masters, they charged forward without fear of death. The combined strength of the three heavenly palaces was over 10 million, but the number that could be used in this battle was only around 2 million. Facing the sky-collapsing tide, everyone had a determined expression. Without any hesitation, they were ready to die. The Sea Emperor, the Shark King, the Whale King, and the top experts of the Sea Clan stood on the waves, laughing with pride as they charged in, their fighting spirits high. Now that the water was pouring in, the bound of universe would soon be filled with the ocean. How could they not be in high spirits? No matter how strong the human race was, even if they had the will to die, in front of the general trend, they were like a mantis trying to stop a chariot, an ant trying to shake a tree. A long howl came from the sky as Yunyang, Ji Lingxi, and Shangguan Lingxiu rushed back and dove down like lightning. Taking the lead, Yunyang plunged into the sea. His water manifestation was operating at full force, unleashing its full potential in an attempt to stop the tide. How could he not know that the chances of success were slim? Such a violent force of the entire ocean was not something he could control. If this method could really stop the tide, he would have used it earlier. However, he was not willing to give up, and he would not give up. With an explosion that sounded like a silver vase exploding, hundreds of thousands of feet of seawater, including the countless sea demons and beasts within, suddenly froze in the air and exploded. Apart from the Saint Monarchs and Saint Venerables, everyone else in the vicinity had their bodies smashed into smithereens, leaving not even their bones behind. Then, the entire stretch of seawater began to roll back, the waves turning downward and colliding head-on with the first wave of the demon race. A series of screams rang in the air, one after another, endlessly. At least half of the demon race's troops were knocked down by the sudden turning waves. Those who fell into the water were muddle-headed and helpless before they were devoured by the sea beasts that came later. This wave alone had killed at least millions of demon race and sea clan members. Of course, the millions mentioned here were mostly ordinary sea beasts. As for the elite forces that participated in the final battle, only about 100,000 of them were killed at most. This number was insignificant, it did not harm the Foundation, nor did it affect the grand plan. However, the endless air of karma rushed into the space like a tidal wave. With another explosion, the forces of the three heavenly palaces had officially engaged the Sea Clan and the demon race. As soon as they clashed, and it was only a single collision, blood sprayed into the sky. A roar came from afar. Supreme Cloud. The voice was extremely shrill, and there was a piercing pain in it. It was Dongfang Haoran. Yin-Yang sucked in a deep breath of essential qi, trying his best to calm the churning qi and blood caused by the recoil. Turning his head, he saw Dongfang Haoran in midair, fighting with more than 30 dragon and phoenix saint experts alone. He was shouting and fighting fiercely, his courage unstoppable. However, he was fighting with all his might. Every move he made was filled with all his might, attacking with all his might. This was not the way to prolong the battle. As the saying went, the hardest breaks easily. Dongfang Haoran must have understood this, so how could he be so foolish? As he fought with all his might, Dongfang Haoran looked over with bloodshot eyes and shouted, "Supreme Cloud! Things are not going well. Ask the Palace of Nine Supremes to withdraw from the battle." Chapter 1502. At the same time, Shiman Fafu and Beigong Lioli roared, "Western Heaven Holy Palace! Northern Wasteland Demonic Palace! Press forward and create an opportunity." The three rulers roared at the same time, "Supreme Cloud! Ask your Palace of Nine Supremes to withdraw from the battle, quickly." Withdraw? Yin-Yang pressed his lips together tightly. He understood Dongfang Haoran and the others' thoughts and actions at once. It seemed that the human race had fallen into an unprecedented disadvantage. Their original plan was almost ruined and they could no longer hold their line of defense. The invasion of the demon race and the sea race was almost a foregone conclusion. Under such circumstances, if they all died here, not only would it not help the situation, it would also cause endless trouble. The only way was to preserve the seeds of human combat power and retreat to the continent. They would fight the demon race continuously for a long time to come so that they could make a comeback in the future. Since they had to be preserved, they had to preserve the most talented and the most potential. Right now, the Palace of Nine Supremes was the only one who fulfilled this condition. It had a complete legacy and unlimited potential. Dongfang Haoran and the others believed and were even more confident that as long as the Palace of Nine Supremes existed, the flame of human cultivation would not be cut off. There would be a day when the demon race would be chased out of the bound of universe and even annihilated. Therefore, Dongfang Haoran and the others made a decision in an instant: the three celestial palaces would fight to the death here. Even if they had to exhaust their lives, they had to create an opportunity for the Palace of Nine Supremes to withdraw as many of its people as possible. In this way, the human race would still have hope in the future. However, Yin-Yang could not accept this kindness. How much had the human race sacrificed and prepared for this day's battle? They had even instigated nearly half of the demon race's higher-ups. Could it be that he still had to admit defeat? If the human race admitted defeat now, the first to defect would be the demon emperors. It was true that they had yet to seek revenge, but they had to have hope of doing so. The demon race was about to be established, they could not go against the current. Even if the eagle race maintained their original intentions, the other sovereigns would not continue to run in the dark for the continuation of their race. Yin-Yang was especially indignant, extremely indignant. There's still a chance, there must be a chance. There's always a way. Yin-Yang's divine edge shone brightly as he executed the 14 styles at the same time. The sea race and demon race within 10,000 feet around him were all cleared. Following that, Yin-Yang changed his saber into a sword and reappeared. What harm is there in slaughtering the entire world? With an indomitable sharp whistle, he charged forcefully into Dongfang Haoran's battle circle in the air, crashing right into it. In an instant, the sword light was like a river of stars hanging upside down, beautiful and boundless. Pu, the 17 demon race saints, without exception, were all covered in blood and fell from the sky powerlessly. As Yin-Yang's combat power soared, he could already injure high-level saints to a certain extent. Although he could not kill them in one fell swoop, it was not too difficult to make them lose their combat power temporarily. Yin Yang grabbed Dongfang Haoran. There's still a chance. There's no chance. Dongfang Haoran was almost begging, Yin Yang, we can't do this, please retreat. Take it as I'm begging you, preserve some hope for us humans. If we all die here, the human race will be finished. Yin Yang gritted his teeth and said, this is only the beginning. The main forces of the demon race and sea race haven't arrived yet. It's only the seawater that has rushed over, but it won't be able to go far in such a short period of time. It's not only us who have miscalculated, but the demon race and sea race as well. I believe they didn't expect the apocalypse strategy to be so powerful. The subsequent strategy will definitely be different from what we've planned. This is our chance. What we can do now, as long as there's someone to stop them, the few of us with the highest cultivation base will go back immediately. 500 miles away, right in front of the human campsite, move the mountain to block the path. Stop the seawater here. The demon race and sea race can move mountains to store the sea, why can't we humans move mountains to stop the tide? Dongfang Haoran's violent and bloodshot eyes shone. This is feasible. Although it was feasible, both Yun Yang and Dongfang Haoran knew that it was only a temporary measure because the mountain had been moved here in a hurry. The mountain that was moved here in a hurry did not possess the indestructibility of the Crimson Soul Mountain that contained the power of the galaxy. Any demon race saint could destroy it as long as they found a chance to get close. But at this moment, this method had become the most important step to stop the sea race. The demon race was terrifying, but what was even more terrifying was the sea race entering the bound of universe with the tide. As long as the tide could not enter the inland, the crisis of humanity would be alleviated by more than 80%. To ordinary humans, it was the weaker sea race that entered with the tide that was more threatening. Then, who's going to stop them? Python 9. Dongfang Haoran howled and charged out from the demon race's encirclement, shouting, Python 9. With a loud bang, Python 9 flew into the air with blood all over his body. What? Our Holy Land still needs another 2 hours. Please, 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 the entire Tian Fa Holy Land. Python 9 immediately turned his head and shouted, Tian Fa Holy Land. All flying mystical beasts, move out. Far away, at the Tian Fa Holy Land's campsite, countless flying mystical beasts soared into the sky with a loud bang, quickly covering the sky. Python 9 pointed with a finger and shouted, children. Blow them up. Blow them up. Yin Yang and the rest were shocked. How to blow them up? Only self-destruction. Self-destruction of the mystical beast's body, self-destruction of the mystical beast's soul. Self-destruction of the mystical beast's inner core. Just like the Falcon Emperor, this was the most extreme method. But the result was the destruction of both his body and soul, consigned to eternal damnation, never to be reincarnated. Go quickly, it's just 2 hours. This old man can stop them. Python 9 did not ask anything, directly turning around to block the demon emperor. Long Yutian, come, hand over your life for this old man. His entire body flew out like a bolt of lightning. Yin Yang and Dongfang Haoran did not hesitate, immediately turning around to look for Shimen Fengfu, who was in the midst of a chaotic battle. After explaining the situation, the three of them left immediately. However, when they rushed over to Beigong Liuli, they saw a scene that made everyone's jaws drop. Because the one fighting with Beigong Liuli right now was the Phoenix Emperor. A completely different person from what everyone knew, the Phoenix Emperor. Every part of the Phoenix Emperor's body was glowing with white light. Just by looking at its appearance, it was like a completely different person from before. Beigong Liuli could be said to be risking her life with all her might, but the Phoenix Emperor only had to lift a hand or a foot to beat Beigong Liuli, one of the three rulers of the bound of universe, into a wobbly state. Furthermore, the Phoenix Emperor looked like he had yet to recover from his heavy injuries, so the signs of the two fighting were extremely strange. Beigong Liuli was no longer the Phoenix Emperor's opponent. A casual punch from the Phoenix Emperor could make Beigong Lioli spit blood and send him flying. Beigong Lioli tried to rush forward again, but he was sent flying again by the Phoenix Emperor's kick. Cracking sounds rang out incessantly. In just a short period of time, who knew how many bones in Beigong Lioli's body had already been broken? But Beigong Lioli still refused to relax, not even for a moment. If he let go of the Phoenix Emperor in this state to deal with someone else, there would probably be a large number of casualties. He charged forward again and again, only to be repelled and injured again and again. His situation was getting worse. As the two of them were locked in a stalemate, the Phoenix Emperor's control of his own power became more and more fluid. It was obvious that he was gradually getting used to the sudden surge in his power. Beigong Lioli was anxious and helpless, despair slowly taking over his heart. It was a sense of helplessness that he had already given up his life but could not cause the slightest bit of harm to the target enemy. It made Beigong Lioli break down. If it were not for his Tao heart of protecting the world and saving the people, Beigong Lioli would have been shattered long ago without the Phoenix Emperor's counterattack. Yin Yang and the other two who witnessed the scene were stunned at the same time. Was that Beigong Lioli? Beigong Lioli's cultivation base was not as good as the Phoenix Emperor's, but it should not be too far off. Even if he was not the Phoenix Emperor's opponent, it would not be difficult for him to fight for more than 1,000 moves. If he were to fight with his life on the line, it should not be a problem for him to fight for a few days and nights. But now, he could not even withstand a single blow from the Phoenix Emperor, who did not seem to be in his best condition. What was going on? Was this not a little too terrifying? Don't come over. Beigong Lioli was bleeding from all of his orifices. Seeing Dongfang Haoran and the others approaching, he shouted sternly, "Don't come over." I don't know why, but the Phoenix Emperor's ability has suddenly increased a lot. With our power level, we can no longer hurt him, but the more people attacking him, the faster he'll get used to the power, just like how he's using me to practice. If you come over, you'll only be digging your own graves. You'll only speed up the fusion process. Don't come over. After I self-destruct, think of something. Beigong Lioli shouted sternly, "Don't come over to help recklessly, the Phoenix Emperor will only benefit." The Phoenix Emperor stood in the air, similarly bleeding from his 7 orifices and covered in wounds. However, his movements were calm, gentle, and graceful. When he saw Yin Yang, he chuckled and said, "Supreme Cloud, the battle has just begun and we've already met again. Come, let me see what kind of monster you are." Before his words echoed in the air, he suddenly ignored Beigong Lioli's frenzied attack and allowed the latter's palms to land on him like a thunderstorm, producing an earth-shattering rumble. He then extended his right hand lightly and punched at Yin Yang from a distance. Yin Yang felt suffocated at once. The Phoenix Emperor's fist had yet to reach him, but the pressure of it was already suffocating him. In his shock, he struck out with his saber. Boom! The Phoenix Emperor's fist pushed against the divine edge and continued to strike, its power increasing instead of decreasing. Bang! The back of the divine edge was pushed back by the ferocious force and crashed into Yin Yang's chest. Yin Yang cried out, feeling like his internal organs were on fire as he flew thousands of feet away, spitting out a mouthful of blood. Looking up, he was in disbelief. Was this the Phoenix Emperor? Was this still the Phoenix Emperor? Chapter 1503. How could this be the Phoenix Emperor that he had fought multiple times with? Yin Yang had even forgotten the pain in his body as he stared at the Phoenix Emperor in bewilderment. As intelligent as he was, he could not wrap his head around the situation. How is it? Supreme Cloud? The Lord Supreme Cloud who constantly creates miracles and reverses the tide. The Phoenix Emperor uttered each word as if he was learning how to speak. His lips opened and closed slightly as if he was struggling to speak. Are you very surprised, and very doubtful? Yin Yang's gaze turned from bewilderment to extreme caution as he suddenly hollered, "Beigong! Step back! What are you doing?" Beigong Lioli had decided to fight the Phoenix Emperor with his life by self-detonation. He did not believe that his self-detonation with this world's pinnacle combat power would not be able to shake the Phoenix Emperor. Just as he was about to attack, he heard Yin Yang's words and turned to ask with a bloodied face. For teeth fell out when he opened his mouth. The pinnacle of this world, the pinnacle of saints, was actually in such a terrible state. Don't fight him. Don't fight him, no one. Yin Yang said loudly, there's a strange power left in his body. It's invincible, but this power is too great. It's far beyond the limits of his physical body. If you fight him, any expert in this world who fights him, no matter how they attack, they'll only help him vent his power. It's the same even if it's a self-detonation attack. It's a power that's far beyond the limits of this world. Step back. Beigong Lioli flew over, his blood flowing like a river. What do we do then? What if we let him attack the other disciples? Aren't we just going to watch as he slaughters us? Yin Yang called out to Dongfang Haoran and the rest to retreat. If he could do that, he would have done so long ago. That would force us to attack him with everything we have and stop him. Right now, he can't activate that mutant giant power. He can't even control it slightly. All he can do is move his fists and legs a little. Otherwise, you wouldn't just be injured. Do you think you can still live until now? Is it just because the Phoenix Empress can't control that power? It's just that every time he uses a bit of power, the burden on him increases a bit. This is the same for any opponent, so he won't attack weak practitioners now. Every time he takes the initiative to attack an enemy, the burden on him increases a bit, because he will be unable to withstand the backlash of that powerful power. Moreover, the weaker a practitioner's cultivation is, the more they will be unable to withstand the backlash, causing the backlash to be unable to find a channel to vent, and will only further damage his body. This is a necessary step for a sudden increase in strength, but it is also the most embarrassing moment for him. Yin Yang was very familiar with such situations. It was the same every time he leveled up abruptly. However, with Emmy around, he had been progressing step by step, unlike the Phoenix Emperor who became a fatty in one gulp. As for the Phoenix Emperor's current condition, it was obvious that he was suffering from severe indigestion. Dongfang Haoran's eyes shone as he said in a low voice, "What you mean is that he can't control his attack force or attack range now? Whether it's us or those with a weaker cultivation base, the attack force will be of the same standard. Those with a weaker cultivation base will be crushed to pieces after taking half of the force, and the remaining 9.5 will be borne by him alone, the kind where he'll be tormented internally and externally." Is that so? Yin Yang nodded. That's right. That's why he's intentionally looking for people of our level to fight. Only then can he have a channel to vent his power, allowing the giant power in his body to circulate bit by bit and gradually be used by him. Therefore, ignoring him is the best way to deal with him right now. It's the only way. Let's retreat. Suffocate him to death. Beigong Lioli and Shimen Huanyu looked at each other with an odd expression. Suffocate him to death? There was actually such a way of doing things. As expected, the Phoenix Emperor was enraged when he saw Yun Yang and the others retreating. He chased after them step by step, but the further he chased, the further he went. He had torn the space apart to rush over, but the next time he appeared, he was hundreds of miles away. He could not even control the distance accurately in a short amount of time. He really can't control it as he pleases. He's not up to par. Dongfang Haoran and the others were experts in cultivation. Seeing this, Yin Yang's judgment was further confirmed. Yin Yang urged, "We don't have time to lament. Every minute and second now is exchanged with our lives. Hurry up." His heart was full of urgency and danger, just like what he had said. He didn't really let go of the matter regarding the Phoenix Empress. The Phoenix Empress' current situation was just as he had said. She couldn't control her surging power, so it was difficult for her to move. However, as long as she was given some time, sooner or later, there would be a day, or rather, a moment, sooner or later, the Phoenix Empress would be able to completely control that power, and then completely grasp it, making it her own. When that time came, it would be the beginning of the true disaster. Looking at the current pinnacle of human combat power, even Yunyang, who had the highest cultivation base, was not a match for the Phoenix Emperor, let alone the others. When that time came, who would be able to resist the Phoenix? However, this was a matter for the future after all. It was not the most urgent matter at hand. Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu flew through the demon race and Sea Clan's camp like lightning, going back and forth in a massacre. With the two ladies' combat power, they were almost invincible, other than the Dragon Emperor and the Phoenix Emperor. No matter where they went, blood flowed like a river. The Sea Clan in the water and the demon race in the air, whenever they encountered them, blood and flesh splattered everywhere. The pinnacle combat power of the three heavenly palaces formed an unusually thin line of defense. It was like a giant fishing net, futilely blocking the Sea Clan and the demon race. However, the seawater was all-pervasive and had already drowned the bloody Soul Mountain. Despite the three heavenly palaces' best efforts, they still could not stop such a long line of defense. After all, there were so many demon race and Sea Clan members. Attention, everyone. Yun Yang's voice reverberated in the air. All combat power above Saint Lord. No one is allowed to fight the Phoenix Emperor. Retreat immediately if you see him. Retreat immediately if you see him. Don't fight him even if he invades inland. The order came out of the blue. Should the two armies fight and not fight the other party's leader? In spite of this, Yun Yang had said so, resolute and resolute. Thanks to Dongfang Haoran's previous strict order, the human experts in the bound of universe obeyed this order unconditionally. There must be a reason why Supreme Cloud did not allow them to fight, so they did not fight. Therefore, no matter where the Phoenix Emperor turned, as long as there were human experts above Saint Lord level, they would retreat immediately to avoid the sharp edge. Then, all the human experts who had encountered the Phoenix Emperor, as long as they were not particularly unlucky and killed in a single blow, discovered something strange in shock. The Phoenix Emperor's performance was too abnormal. She attacked very slowly in battle, and most of her attacks would miss. Her movements were extremely inflexible. Sometimes, when she wanted to go around the back of the enemy to stop them, she would end up going hundreds of miles away. It was as if she had gone around in circles. If it were not for the large number of human experts dying in the hands of the Phoenix Emperor, everyone would almost think that the Phoenix Emperor was a spy of the human race. However, even if she was a spy, her acting skills were too frightening. What on earth was going on? The demonic wind howled in the distance, covering the sky and the sun. The black mass of demons came riding the demonic wind, covering the sky and earth. The second wave of the demon race had finally arrived. The first wave of the demon race's combat power was stopped by Yun Yang, who had reversed the flow of the water channel with all his might. There were countless casualties, and they were utterly defeated. However, the second wave of a larger scale had arrived. Without Yun Yang or the three rulers, who were the pinnacle of combat power to resist, how could they stop the invasion? Then, the booming sounds suddenly connected together and exploded continuously. The sound waves were actually louder and louder than the previous one. It was the despairing human experts who had charged into the densely packed crowd of demons and marine clans, turning their bodies, cultivation base, and souls into a shocking explosion. Yun Yang's heart was dripping with blood. The Phoenix Emperor was still fighting in the air. His target was no longer limited to the human race. As long as he seized the opportunity, he would attack the experts below who were strong enough to withstand his attack. With a casual strike of his palm, there would be a large number of casualties. The number of casualties was much higher than the number of demons killed by a Supreme Saint expert's self-detonation. In this relentless battle, the Phoenix Emperor finally released a portion of his energy, and his attacks gradually became more fluid. The process was slow, but the Phoenix Emperor's improvement was seen by those who were observant. Faster! Python 9 roared. He was being chased by the Phoenix Emperor until he had nowhere to go. Yin-yang tore the space apart and hurried to the human camp. Actually, the seawater had already rushed over. What he could see was a vast ocean, but the depth of the water was only about the height of an adult, so the situation was not too bad. Yin-yang landed with a loud roar, and a thick yellow light shot out from his body. This was the power of thick earth that originated from Supreme Earth, and it exploded. In the past, Yin-yang had mostly used the method of escaping through the earth, but this time, he was gathering the power of thick earth to forcefully create mountains and cut off the flow of water. Yin-yang had pushed himself to the limit. Not only had he drained all of his mystical qi, he had also poured out the power of the endless divine art. It was as if he had drained the golden goose that laid the golden eggs. Under the shocked gazes of Dongfang Haoran and the others, behind Yin-yang, a mountain range that stretched for thousands of miles appeared with a soft rumble. This mountain range was 10,000 feet tall, but it was 7,000 miles long. Looking down from above, one could see that this mountain range was shaped like an oval, facing the direction of the Blood Soul Mountain, outflanking it from afar. The distance between the two sides was at most 3,000 to 4,000 miles. More importantly, the seawater had not yet spread to the other side. Faster. Move the mountain. Block both ends. Chapter 1504. Yin-yang urged repeatedly. His rapid panting and pale face indicated that his condition had fallen to rock bottom. Obviously, the attack just now had drained all of his cultivation base. He was exhausted and could no longer continue. However, the new strategic barrier that Yin-yang had mentioned earlier had taken shape. It was not just a prototype but a solid foundation. As long as it was used as a foundation, it would be easier to add more bricks and tiles in the future. Dongfang Haoran and the others were overjoyed. They were initially doubtful of Yin-yang's suggestion, thinking that it was a last-ditch effort, a last resort, but now it seemed to be highly feasible. The three of them tore the void apart and left immediately. Dong Qitian, Shi Wuchen, Ling Xiaozue, and the others, who were the Palace of Nine Supreme's forces, had yet to fight in the camp. Upon Yin-yang's command, they tore the void apart and flew out as well. They went around looking for mountains to move over. The seawater was immediately blocked here. The atmosphere of the battle 100 miles away was getting more and more intense. There were constant sounds of explosions, shaking the earth and mountains. Most of them were the self-destruction of human experts, but there were also those of the demon race and sea clan experts. Everyone was fighting for their lives. The demon race's tens of thousands of years of hope, humanity's last barrier. Everyone had their reasons for not retreating. You exchange your life for victory, I exchange my victory for the reproduction of my race. Strictly speaking, their states of mind were about the same. On Yin-yang's side, the rumbling sounds continued to ring out as well. It was the sound of mountains falling and crashing into the ground. In his deific consciousness space, a sea of pure spiritual qi surged into Yin-yang's meridians. There were also the medicinal pills refined by Emi, supreme-grade medicinal pills specifically designed to replenish spiritual energy. Yin-yang opened his mouth and sucked hundreds of them into his mouth. Although Emi had concocted such a large amount of spiritual medicine, it was not appropriate for Yin-yang to consume so many of them in one go. However, Yin-yang's cultivation base was already half a step away from the starry sky realm. Although the spiritual medicine Emi had refined was of the highest grade, the effect of a few of them was limited. He could not care less about the aftereffects now that the war was so dangerous. Recovering his ability was the top priority. The intensity of the battle near the old site of the Crimson Soul Mountain had reached an unimaginable and indescribable stage. Members of the Palace of Nine Supremes, stand on the hill. Be ready to fight at any time. Do not attack without the order to fight. He wanted to see how his seniors fought. Cultivation is not equivalent to combat experience. Your experience is far from enough. You have to see clearly how this prosperous world came to be, and what is protecting it. Yin-yang had recovered a little of his energy and immediately issued his first order, informing the entire Palace of Nine Supremes. Tens of thousands of Palace of Nine Supreme's disciples leaped onto the newly raised hilltop, their eyes fixed on the rising dust and smoke in the distance and the incessant cries of agony. Hundreds of miles away, they could still see the ghastly red on the other side. This is the boundless secular world. This is the light of the homes. This is the price of peace. Yin Yang's voice was low. I can clearly tell you that the first wave of seniors from the three great heavenly palaces has a total of 2.7 million people. It's only been an hour since the battle started, but now 2,700,000. Yin Yang's Adam's apple bobbed. Those who survived, at most, won't exceed 700,000. The first line of defense could fall at any time. Those who can retreat and return to the second line of defense will only be Saint Lords and experts above the Supreme Saint level. As for those below the Supreme Saint level, I'm afraid, even a Supreme Saint expert may not be able to hold on for long in such a fierce battle. The Holy Land of Tian Fa has deployed hundreds of millions of soldiers for the second line of defense. That's a lot, isn't it? But I want to tell you, compared to the experts of the demon race and the Sea clan, this force is still far from enough. This is a long line of defense that stretches for tens of thousands of miles. Battles are happening everywhere. People are dying. People are dying everywhere. This battle will not end until all the demon race is killed. If the Sea clan is not killed, the sea will still drown the continent. And if we, the Guardians, are not killed. Yin Yang's voice grew louder. None of the demon race and the Sea clan can enter. The faces of Yun Xiuxin and the others were glowing. Their eyes were shining inexplicably. Once the order to enter the battle is given, it will be your turn to fight. Maybe you will die, maybe you will be crippled, or maybe you will survive, Yun Yang said softly. Take a good look at this continent, the continent behind you, for the last time. Remember what you see and what you can see. This place is under our protection. If there is a next life, I want to be born on this continent, born as a human. For mankind, fight to the end. For mankind. Fight to the end. All the disciples of the Palace of Nine Supremes raised their fists and shouted. The rumbling sound stopped, and the mountain ranges connected, forming a complete arc. Seawater continued to pour in, but as long as it reached here, it would be blocked. More and more seawater accumulated and became deeper and deeper. However, under Yun Yang's continuous operation, the mountains grew taller and taller, and the power of thick earth continued to strengthen the peaks. For a moment, the situation seemed to have stabilized. But Yun Yang knew that this was still far from enough. How could the seawater, which had been mobilized by all the manpower and resources of the demon race and the Sea clan of the demon realm, be so easy to deal with? The battle that followed would only be more tragic. At present, the only thing he could do was to strengthen the dam as much as possible while the battlefield had not shifted here. On the other side, the flying mystical beasts of the three heavenly palaces and Tian Fa were still fighting desperately to buy time for this side. The battle at the old site of the Blood Soul Mountain had really reached its climax. The seawater had turned the entire battlefield into a vast ocean. When human experts were exhausted from the intense battle, it was inevitable that they would fall into the water and use the force to recover their qi. However, once they landed on the surface of the sea, they would be attacked by many marine mystical beasts, torn apart or devoured. It took a great deal of effort for them to break free. There were also many human martial artists who were ambushed by the sea creatures and never made it out. Those who were luckier and stronger could even self-destruct underwater when they saw that the situation was not looking good. But most of them died silently, buried in the stomachs of the fishes. Not even their bones were left. The seawater was extremely murky, but even in such a murky state, streams of blood kept rising. The first squad of mystical beasts, flying rocks, had arrived on the battlefield. However, they had no intention of fighting normally at all. Under Python 9's command, the human experts nearby retreated hastily, as if they were hiding from something. After that, the first wave of 999 flying rocks lined up in an orderly formation, and they let out shrill cries as they descended ferociously and resolutely. With a loud explosion, the 999 mystical beasts all exploded together. Neatly, they self-destructed together and entered the battle to meet their deaths. This scene caused countless human experts who had just retreated to be deeply moved. Tears flowed uncontrollably from their eyes. Tears streamed down their faces. And this was just the beginning. Squads of rocks lined up neatly, just like the first squads. They flew through the air, their postures elegant and graceful. They didn't even spare a glance in the direction of the first squads. They didn't even turn back to look at the place they grew up in. The only thing they let out was a long cry of farewell to this world. After that long cry, it was followed by a violent explosion. The torrent of seawater was almost cut off by their explosions. The entire sea region was dyed a shade of red. However, this shade of red was created by countless sea clan and demon clan members. Countless corpses of the sea and demon races floated on the surface of the water, but there wasn't a single mystical beast corpse. This was because they had all turned into the brightest stars in the sky. They came and went in a calm and orderly manner. From the initial group of 1,000 to the later groups of 10, they all lined up and directly used their own bodies as weapons, their own lives as sharp blades, to bombard the 3,000 li of sea on the other side. Hundreds of millions of demonic beasts died just like that in their self-detonation attacks. And behind the Xian beast shed, there was also the eagle race, crane race, condor race. All the large flying races of this world stood in formation in the sky, waiting for the moment to explode. Throughout the entire process, not a single mystical beast spoke, much less made any noise. All the kings of the mystical beasts led the higher-ranked mystical beasts of their respective races to salute and wait in the sky. To send off their brothers, to pay their respects. And to send themselves off. Meng Jiao stood in the sky, his face contorted. Only tears flowed down his face, but he still shouted with all his might, "Next team!" Even the Phoenix Monarch, whose hands were filled with blood and whose heart was extremely cold, stopped in midair. His face was solemn as he looked over. Originally, he only needed to make a move to stop all of this. In fact, the self-destruction of the mystical beasts made it easier for him to control his power. But the Phoenix Emperor did not make a move. His face was still full of respect. The demon race, the human race, and the Xian beasts were recognized as the three great races of the Xian Huang continent. However, the demon race and the human race had vast territories, while the Xian beasts had stayed in a corner of the Tian Fa Holy Land for hundreds of millions of years. Their combat strength was ranked below the demon race and the human race. Every 100 years, the Xian beasts would wage a fierce battle with the demon race to protect their realm. They would not rest until death. Even if they were weaker than the demon race, they would still use their bodies to block the attack and their lives to make up for it. Every time, the demon race would return in defeat. Strictly speaking, the Phoenix Emperor knew the combat methods of the mystical beasts, but she hadn't seen it with her own eyes. After all, the participants in the Battle of the Barrier Passageway didn't include high-level great demons. Thus, she had only heard of this kind of self-detonation attack. Now, he was watching from up close. These Xian beasts, whose cultivation bases weren't high enough to fight head-on, had used such a method. They had used a formation to fuse their collective power into one, and then forcibly increased their power. Then, they had unleashed a heaven-shaking explosion. It truly caused the Phoenix Emperor to be extremely shocked and gasp in amazement. It was to the extent that she couldn't bear to disturb or destroy it. Even if they died in such a heroic way, it was still an honor. Even if they died in such a heroic way, it was still an honor. Chapter 1505. Many of the self-destructing mystical beasts had only just reached the 9th level and above. They had just gained the ability to shapeshift. Their abilities were hovering around this level. The lower they were, they could not control the timing of their self-destruction at all. The higher they were, however, were not more than 2 levels higher. If they were to fight alone against the army of the demon race and the sea race, the only outcome for these Xian beasts would be death. They would be swallowed up and not a single one of them would be able to defeat them. How could the Sea Clan, which could manipulate the seawater and the demons who came riding on the waves, be able to do so without a certain level of foundation? Each of them was a relatively high-level demon. However, Tian Fa's mystical beasts used such a method. The number of enemies they brought away was far more than the number they sacrificed. Tens of thousands of mystical rocks charged down, one after the other. The results were remarkable. The Phoenix Sovereign sighed inwardly. Tian Fa's sacred beasts had guarded the boundary for so many years on their own. They could do what others could not. Other than the emotional Phoenix Sovereign not interfering, it was not that there were no high-level demon experts stopping them. However, the first wave of the demon race's combat power coincided with Yun Yang's futile attempt to defy the natural order. He had forcefully stopped the tide and returned to counterattack the first wave of the demon race's main force. Although Yun Yang had suffered a great loss, the results were bountiful. Although the second wave of the demon race's combat power had arrived, there were not many of them. The leaders were mostly high-level and intermediate saints. They wanted to stop them, but they were all stopped by human experts such as Ji Lingxi, Shangguan Lingxiu, and Meng Jiu. This heroic explosion and the exploding fireworks caused every human expert present to be extremely excited and indescribably shocked. Their only remaining thought was to stop the demon race's experts with all they had, fighting with all their might with tears in their eyes. At least, they had to make the mystical beast's sacrifice more worthwhile. As the Black Rock lineage's self-detonation attack ended, the crane lineage continued. Similarly, 999 cranes formed a team and charged down without hesitation, calmly diving into the depths of the sea to self-detonate. Later, under Meng Jiu's command, 100 teams spread out and charged down at the same time. Such an extreme attack mode, even if they were occasionally stopped, would only explode in the air and perish together with the enemy. From the beginning to the end, not a single mystical beast flinched. Calm and intense, calm and noble. From this day onwards, the name of Tian Fa Xian beasts became an unsurpassable legend in the Xianhuang world. On the other side, Yun Yang, who had swallowed a mouthful of medicinal pills, had finally recovered a little. He stood up and ordered, "This newly built line of defense shall not be destroyed. We swear to live and die with this line of defense." Yes. All the nearby human experts puffed out their chests. After giving the order, Yun Yang tore the space apart and hurried back to the battlefield at the old site of the Blood Soul Mountain. A moment later, Dongfang Haoran and the rest rushed over, drenched in sweat. Following Yun Yang's footsteps, they plunged into the battlefield. The foundation of the defense line at the other end of the sea had already been established, temporarily solving the urgent problem. Piling up more would only be a burden. It was better to put more energy into the main battlefield. Right in front of them, a peak Saint Monarch from the Eastern Celestial Palace was covered in blood. He had been pushed back by a demon race saint expert. His expression was miserable, and he looked extremely defeated. "Palace Master. Our people. Our people." Halfway through her words, she couldn't continue. She choked with sobs, and tears gushed out of her eyes. "Everyone is dead, all dead," Dongfang Haoran said angrily. "What are you crying for? Go and fight. Kill. Fight." "Yes. Palace Master." The Saint Monarch expert was shocked. He took a deep breath of mystical qi and turned to rush in. Yun Yang appeared beside the Saint Monarch expert in a flash and stuffed a medicinal pill in his hand. He said, "Eat it and fight again." Before the Saint Monarch could thank him, Yun Yang had already disappeared. He was going to find the Demon Emperor. Now, both sides said that the ultimate war had begun, but it was still just a battle. Everyone only had one life, and it was not certain who was afraid of who. They would just fight. The real threat to the humans was the flood. The seawater was a huge, pervasive hidden danger. Even if the humans won, as long as a portion of the sea race's manpower entered the bound of universe with the water, it would be a huge problem that would be difficult to stop. To solve this problem, only the oceanic suppressing divine staff could be used. Only the oceanic suppressing divine staff's ability to suppress the sea could completely solve this problem. Yin-Yang entered the battle again. His divine edge rained down on the enemies like a thunderstorm, killing thousands of sea-race demonic beasts in an instant. Yin-Yang did not hold back after his successful strike. He spun and soared into the sky, killing countless demonic beasts along the way. When he reached the sky and looked afar, he saw Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu going on a killing spree. There were not many experts from the demon race surrounding the two ladies. There were only layers of demonic beasts that were slaughtered by the two ladies like tigers in a flock of sheep. The demon race and the sea race were naturally unwilling to let the two ladies slaughter their own combat power. More than 20 demon saints gave up on the other enemies and focused on Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu. Although they could not cause direct damage to the two ladies with their saint-level recovery ability, they could ensure that they would not be killed or crippled. When they saw the demon race experts being chased by the two ladies, they went forward to interfere. It was a pity that this tactic was no longer new. The demon race experts had probably done the same when they followed Yin-Yang to destroy the peaks previously. The two ladies were very clear about their own identities. Why would they bother with opponents that they could not kill? Their current goal was to kill as many demonic beasts as possible. They would not waste their energy on the high-level demon race and the sea race. If you want to fight us, come and fight us. We're not afraid anyway. We have recoil. Seeing that the two ladies were getting more and more courageous as they fought, there was no one who could withstand a single blow. The 20 saints could only watch helplessly, helpless. At this time, a violent rumble rang in the sky again. The demon race's third wave of combat power, the main force of the main force, had finally arrived at the main battlefield and charged past the bloody Soul Mountain. As far as the eye could see, countless demon race experts had joined the battle, causing a drastic change in the situation. The three heavenly palaces had been fighting for a full 2 hours. Their casualties had reached an alarming number. It was already difficult to deal with them, and now that the other party had added strong reinforcements, how could they resist? The line of defense collapsed instantly. Retreat, all of you, retreat! Dongfang Haoran roared. The surviving combat forces were all experts on his side. Otherwise, they would not have been able to hold out until now. They could not risk their lives recklessly. Countless human experts were fighting desperately in the tide-like horde of demonic beasts. Many of them rose into the sky and turned back quickly. At the same time, the land mystical beasts from the Holy Land of Tianfa, who had been preparing for a long time, entered the battle. They took over the direction of the human defense and fought ferociously. The three juggernauts stood high up in the sky, providing support to the human experts who had retreated. They also began to resist the pursuit of the Demon Emperor, the Ocean Emperor, and the other high-level sages. Finally, with the three of them working together, their might was unparalleled, and they managed to protect most of the human experts. But when they looked closely at the subordinates who had retreated, they all had a miserable expression on their faces. 2,700,000 brothers charged forward. Now, there are less than 200,000 that have retreated alive. Everyone is heavily injured. Suddenly, there was a loud explosion. The 400 to 500 human experts who had just finished gathering were smashed into the center by the Phoenix Emperor's crazed punch. With a loud explosion, these 400 to 500 people turned into dust, instantly disappearing without a trace. Their souls were completely destroyed. Among them, there was even an initial level saint. The power of a single punch from the Phoenix Emperor was actually this strong? Phoenix Emperor. Dongfang Haoran's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. The Phoenix Emperor turned around and looked at him provocatively. Although his body was still swaying, and his reaction was still slow, and he still could not grasp the size of his attack, but Dongfang Haoran could clearly feel it. The current Phoenix Emperor was much calmer than when he was fighting with Beigong Liuli. He was already gradually getting used to his new strength, and he was using it as his own. Perhaps not long from now, he would be able to control it freely. What should they do then? Once the Phoenix Emperor's integration was successful, no one on their side would be a match for him. How should they deal with this powerful enemy? At this moment, unexpectedly, Shengguan Lingxiu was facing the Demon Emperor head-on. The main force of the demon race was the elites of the Dragon Clan and the Phoenix Clan. The other demon elites such as the Tiger Clan, Panther Clan, Rock Clan, and Crane Clan did not participate in the battle. The combat power of the other clans was much weaker. Even the emperors of the clans were at most high-level saints. Looking at the entire demon race's combat power, the only ones who could suppress Ji Lingxi and Shengguan Lingxiu were the Demon Emperor and the Phoenix Emperor. After all, the two girls' states were too unique. The protective mystical light around them was already undefeatable, and the rest of the demons were no match for them in terms of combat power. Even if they did not care about their pride, they would not be able to do so. Only a pinnacle expert who could suppress them head-on could stop their momentum. After all, the Phoenix Emperor had injured Ji Lingxi in a way that no one else could. Therefore, the demon race assumed that the Demon Emperor would be able to kill the two girls. The Demon Emperor was infuriated when he saw the two girls slaughtering the demons mercilessly. The Phoenix Emperor's condition was obviously not right. It was probably because of the light of apocalypse that had entered her body. Even if she wanted to target the two girls, it would be difficult. Naturally, the Demon Emperor had to do it himself. The Demon Emperor's first appearance was the center of attention. In the eyes of the demons and even the humans and mystical beasts, Shengguan Lingxiu was doomed. It was a pity that such a beauty would be lost. What surprised everyone was that not only was Shengguan Lingxiu not defeated immediately when she fought the Demon Emperor head-on, she did not even fall into a disadvantageous position. No matter how the Demon Emperor roared and how domineering he was still being suppressed by Shengguan Lingxiu, unable to turn the situation around. The Demon Emperor, who was known as the unrivaled cultivation base and combat power, was actually no match for Shengguan Lingxiu. The Demon Emperor's arrogant entrance was actually beaten to such a sorry state. Was this a joke? Yin Yang rushed over upon hearing the news. His eyes almost popped out of their sockets when he saw the scene. Chapter 1506. Yin Yang had once felt the demonic emperor's aura up close. The aura was truly beyond the level of any expert in this world. Even with Yin Yang's current cultivation base and ability level, Yin Yang thought that he would only have a 30% chance of winning if he were to fight the demonic emperor alone. Indeed, Yin Yang thought that he only had a 30% chance of winning. However, the demonic emperor was roaring furiously, but he was being beaten back by Shengguan Lingxiu. Yet, the demonic emperor was proud of his invincibility. He could not bring himself to ask for his subordinates' help when everyone was watching. He could only channel his demonic qi with all his might, trying to salvage the situation. However, what puzzled Yin Yang the most was not the fact that the Demon Emperor was no match for Shengguan Lingxiu, but something else. The Demon Emperor's current appearance was like a different person from the one he had seen the other day. If it were not for the yellow robe he was wearing and the aura that matched his combat power, Yin Yang would not have recognized him at all. In the midst of the intense battle, the demonic emperor's face was aging rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye. His white hair fluttered, and some of his hair even fell off and flew away as he fought. His face was withered and wrinkled, almost like a dying old man. If he were to transform into a dragon, he would probably be an old, toothless dragon. What exactly was going on? Yin Yang turned to look and realized that the Phoenix Emperor had been keeping his distance. Although he would join in the battle from time to time, he had never come over. He had been keeping his distance from the demonic emperor since the beginning. In fact, he had even stayed out of his sight. Wherever the Phoenix Emperor passed, the demonic race was victorious. However, even when the demonic emperor was in trouble, the Phoenix Emperor and the experts of the Phoenix clan did not seem to see him, only fighting where they were. The more the demonic emperor was in danger, the more the Phoenix clan and the human experts were locked in battle. Judging by the looks of it, they really could not spare a hand to save him. This was something that would have been difficult to notice in a chaotic battlefield where millions of experts were fighting. However, when Yin Yang saw the demonic emperor in such a difficult situation, he instinctively felt that something was amiss. Now that he saw the Phoenix Emperor and the Phoenix clan's abnormal behavior, he realized the problem immediately. As the saying goes, one small clue can reveal the general trend. After thinking about it, he faintly felt that there was probably something unusual about this, right? Yin Yang frowned. On the other side, the Demon King was also very confused. With his level of cultivation, if he still couldn't sense that there was something wrong with his body, he would have lived his life in vain. Ever since the start of the world annihilation strategy, he had never stopped. He tore through space, arranged an army, rushed to the Blood-Soul realm, gathered the army, and then immediately set off, crossing thousands of miles to descend upon the battlefield. He felt that he was always at his peak, and he had absolute confidence in his body. That was why he didn't have any doubts about his own condition during this hurried journey. But when he came here and started fighting, he was shocked to find that there was something wrong with him. An indescribable feeling of helplessness caused him to be restricted in all aspects. For example, this human woman in front of him had a high cultivation base and special protective abilities, but her cultivation base was only enhanced by external forces. This naturally led to many moves, many comprehensions, and many attacks, to have flaws. These were flaws that could only be eliminated after years of polishing. The Demon Emperor could tell with a single glance. As long as he could grasp any flaw, he was confident that he could kill this woman in an extremely short amount of time. Others might be afraid of the woman's mystical light, but as the demon realm's unrivaled expert, he would not take it too seriously. After all, the Phoenix Emperor had broken through this mystical light once before. The Demon Emperor, who was confident in his offensive power, was more confident that he could succeed with a single strike. However, when he saw the flaw and knew how to break through it, he knew how to attack. The truth was that he was powerless. There were opportunities everywhere, but he could not grasp any of them and missed them all. That was too terrifying. The Demon Emperor was terrified. He, who was known as the unrivaled expert, had stood at the pinnacle for far too long and had been invincible for far too long. Now that he had fallen into such a state, he did not know how to deal with it. He was so terrified that he was out of his wits. Realizing that he could not defeat the enemy and was even on the verge of defeat, he almost wanted to leave. He could not afford to lose this face. He wanted to escape from this battlefield. He wanted to go back and check what had happened to him. What was wrong with his body? As Shangguan Lingxiu's attacks grew fiercer, the Demon Emperor grew more and more panicked. He could clearly sense that his overwhelming, indestructible demonic qi in the past was gradually drying up. Drying up. This was a terrifying thing. To any cultivator, it was an extremely terrifying thing. I'm in the prime of my life, and I have a cultivation base that has surpassed Pinnacle Saint. I'm a half step into the starry sky. As long as my demonic soul is not destroyed, I'm an immortal existence. My demonic qi will only be born endlessly, endless and endless. How could my demonic qi dry up? The Demon Emperor resisted Shangguan Lingxiu's attack with all his might, but he could not evade in time. Whether it was because he was distracted or because he was too weak, he was stabbed in the shoulder by Shangguan Lingxiu's sword. The Demon Emperor could only feel a piercing pain as his protective demonic qi was pierced through, leaving a bloody hole in his shoulder. He had been pierced through. The Spirit Demon Emperor was stunned and retreated 100 feet. He turned his head and looked at his shoulder in disbelief. Even Yun Yang's saber, widely acknowledged as the sharpest in the continent, could not have pierced through his shoulder. What was going on? He tilted his head, the hair on his shoulder falling in front of his eyes. The Demon Emperor was stunned. That snow-white, withered hair, the hair that had no sign of life, was mine? Shocked by the realization, he stood in the air, dumbfounded. Shangguan Lingxiu was not idling. She had a clear understanding of her own capabilities and knew that the demon emperor before her was not an expert that she could match. She could not afford to attack with all her might, so she dared not be distracted. She would not miss the opportunity when her enemy faltered. Only God knew if there would be another chance like this in the future. 17 consecutive slashes struck the demon emperor's left eye, forehead, heart, right chest, dantian, throat, back of his head, temple. So many vital points were all struck. Yes, every single one of them had been struck without a single mistake. Fresh blood splattered everywhere. The demon sovereign seemed to have awoken from a dream, and he let out a series of heart-wrenching screams. He desperately pushed his demonic chi to retreat thousands of feet, and used all his cultivation to recover from his injuries. But just as his body recovered, he staggered and almost fell into the sea below. It was fine that he had not used his pinnacle power, but now that he had used it, the demon emperor's heart sank to the bottom. His life force had truly been drained. Not only was his physical vitality drained, his soul was withering as well. There was only a thin layer of his deific consciousness left as well. The last bit of energy, the last bit of demonic energy, had been used by him to heal his body just now. In other words, there was not a single drop of demonic chi left in his body now. He was completely and utterly exhausted. This was a condition even worse than being out of breath and yuan chi being exhausted. It was so bad that it couldn't be any worse. The demon emperor struggled to stand in the air, his entire body trembling. Suddenly, he turned back as if he had thought of something. Staring at the silhouette that was emitting a blazing white light, he roared with all his might, "Phoenix Emperor." His voice was trembling. In his roar, there was endless fear, terror and disbelief. The Phoenix Emperor seemed to have heard the roar and turned to look at him. His gaze seemed to meet the demon emperor's from afar, but then he started fighting with the human experts beside him. As he moved, he got further and further away from them. Then, with a spatial tear, he disappeared completely. The demon emperor seemed to have understood something. He felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. His entire body was cold and trembling. He raised his hand. His arm was skinny and there was only a layer of wrinkled skin attached to the bones. It looked like a chicken claw that had not been completely dried. The demon emperor roared and struggled to rise up, revealing his true form in the air. It was supposed to be a majestic golden dragon descending from the heavens, majestic and awe-inspiring. However, what was reflected in the eyes of the people fighting was this old golden dragon. He opened his mouth and roared, and the dragon teeth in his mouth actually fell off. The demon emperor was completely dumbfounded. Even if he was a dragon that had died of old age, his body was still very strong. At least his teeth would still remain on his body and would not fall off on their own. Even if he had been tempered by wind and frost for thousands of years, his teeth would still remain on his body, strong and sharp. But I have not died of old age yet. I am still in my prime. But why did my teeth fall off on their own? Even his ability to fly in the air was gradually being lost. The demon emperor felt his body falling down like a rock. Emperor. The golden dragon great elder and the green dragon great elder were in the middle of the battle. When they saw this, they roared in disbelief. The demon emperor fell down in a daze. He had already guessed that this was the doing of the Phoenix Emperor. But how did he do it? What was the reason? He could not figure it out. He could not figure it out. Everything was fine. It had only been 2 days. 2 days ago, no. More accurately speaking, it should be 1.5 days ago. He was still in charge of the world annihilation stratagem. At that time, he was still at his peak, invincible. World annihilation stratagem. These 3 words suddenly came to the demon emperor's mind. These 3 words allowed him to regain some of his sanity. He forcefully reverted to his human form and hovered in the air above the sea. The burden of transforming into his true form was too great. His current demonic energy could no longer bear it. With a flash, Shangguan Lingxiu appeared before the Demon Emperor and raised her long sword. The Demon Emperor lifted his head abruptly and said to Shangguan Lingxiu with a frown, "Give me some time. I need to sort some things out." The Demon Emperor's voice was steady yet calm, with a hint of resoluteness that did not allow for rejection. Chapter 1507. Even when he was at the end of his rope, he still had the demeanor of a ruler that could not be profaned. In spite of this, Shangguan Lingxiu was still rather speechless. Even if he was the emperor of the demon clan, both parties were enemies. Mercy to the enemy was cruelty to one's own people. What was more, if the other party's chief or the demon emperor were to be killed, this battle would be advantageous to the bound of universe. "I don't have much time left. Give me one last chance to live." The demon emperor was expressionless, his gray eyes fixed on her. Very well. Shangguan Lingxiu was puzzled as well. The person in front of her was the demon emperor, the ruler of the demon race that unified the world. The legendary unrivaled expert. Yet, how could this person not be her opponent? She had been suppressing him the entire time, and as the fight went on, he seemed to have aged, as if he was about to die of old age. This development was not normal. What was going on? Shangguan Lingxiu was a person who knew the art of war and was a great general. She paid particular attention to the big picture. If it were Ji Lingxi who was fighting the demon emperor, she would have continued to attack. However, Shangguan Lingxiu was acutely aware that something was amiss, so she did not continue to attack. After all, the demon emperor now was so old that he looked like he was about to fade away. Even though he was once the supreme ruler of the demon race, he was now at the end of his life. He no longer had the power to harm anyone. Perhaps, he would die of natural causes if he were to stand for a while longer. Shangguan Lingxiu thought about it and finally decided to stop. At the same time, there was a vague thought in her mind, perhaps this was the turning point of this battle? Emperor. The dragon saints who were still fighting around them charged over with all their might. The demon emperor and the dragon emperor were the representatives of the dragon clan's confidence, the source of their reverence. They could not be lost. More than 40 dragon saints charged over with an overwhelming force. Countless human experts and mystical beast experts along the way could not stop them at all. Yin Yang could stop them, but he did not move, focusing his attention on the demon emperor instead. In fact, Yin Yang had tacitly agreed to Shangguan Lingxiu's actions. Otherwise, he would have gone over to finish her off. He had also noticed and even confirmed that the demon emperor's current state was extremely lethargic. It was a state where his life force had been depleted to the extreme. Yin Yang had come into contact with too much spiritual qi of vitality, so his knowledge of it was far above anyone else in this world. It was almost impossible to reverse the state of the demon emperor's life force and soul being completely depleted. Unless Yin Yang took out more than 1,000 strands of qi of vitality in one go, in addition to Emmy's energy, the demon emperor could not die. Forget about Emmy, even Yin Yang himself would not be able to overcome 1,000 strands of qi of vitality. To use such a massive amount of resources to save an enemy, and the enemy's boss at that. Was he out of his mind? However, it was because of this understanding that Yin Yang allowed Shangguan Lingxiu to stop. Yin Yang also suddenly felt that this might be a chance to stop the war between the two races. Yin Yang watched the scene in silence. Suddenly, he waved his hand and said, "Let them come." The demon emperor lifted his head abruptly and hollered with all his remaining energy, "Don't come over." The dragon saints on the other side were stunned. They looked at Yin Yang in disbelief, then at the demon emperor in unison. "All of you stay where you are and await further orders." The demon emperor sighed softly, his heart softened. A total of 43 sages of the dragon tribe stood in the air, forming a large circle to protect the demon emperor. In this circle, there was not only the demon emperor, but also Shangguan Lingxiu and Yin Yang who had just joined. As the archenemy, both sides were surrounded by the strongest experts of the demon race and the human race, but they had formed an unusually delicate balance, each minding their own business. The demon emperor lifted his head with effort, his body falling uncontrollably. The exhalation just now had obviously drained some of his remaining energy. He suddenly turned his head and said, "Supreme Cloud, send a dragon over to carry me. I can't fly anymore. I can't fly anymore." These 5 words were like 5 huge hammers that smashed into the ears of all the experts on both sides, smashing into everyone's hearts. All right. Before Yun Yang could speak, the great elder of the Golden Dragon had already flown to the demon emperor's side and cried out pitifully, "Your Majesty." He then turned under the demon emperor and turned into a golden dragon that was only several feet long, allowing the demon emperor to sit cross-legged on his body. The demon emperor lowered his head, as if he was deep in his memories. Many things that had long been erased from his memory resurfaced at this moment. He murmured, "Where's the Phoenix Emperor? I'm going. Isn't he coming to send me off? Summon the Phoenix Emperor." The demon emperor's voice was low but determined. "Tell him that I'm going. But I want to know why." The 10 dragon race sages agreed. Dragon roars sounded and they scurried out in all directions. Clearly, they were going to look for the Phoenix Emperor. The demon emperor was going. However, this news could not be publicized. The apocalyptic strategy had just begun, the demon race had just invaded the bound of universe, and the war of the century between humans and demons had just begun. At this time, the demon emperor's sudden death could not be announced. They had gone to find the Phoenix Emperor. The demon emperor regained his composure and sat quietly on the golden dragon's back. He closed his eyes and waiting for someone who was unlikely to return. His expression changed from endless desolation to calm. After all, he was an emperor of a generation. After roughly understanding his current situation, he would not make any unnecessary moves. Since he was destined to die, then the most important thing was to deal with all the unfinished business in the future. His surroundings were still filled with loud cheers and cries of the battlefield. Right in front of him, 300 of the Fox Emperor's personal guards were fighting with the Demon Emperor's 2,000 personal guards. This was a battle to the death between the personal guards, and they would not rest until one of them was dead. Yin Yang had wanted to help, but he was stopped by the Fox Empress who had just arrived. This is a battle that belongs to them, the final battle. This battle is for their emperor. The outcome of the battle, victory or defeat, life or death, is actually not important. What they care about is this final battle. At the same time, only in a battle like this will they feel that their emperor is still alive. He's still watching them, still leading them. 300 of the Fox Emperor's personal guards were not weak, but they paled in comparison to the Demon Emperor's personal guards. Even if they were willing to die, the difference in their abilities was still diminishing. However, they still cheered and fought. Blood still flowed. Occasionally, the Dragon Emperor's personal guards would self-destruct, but most of them were the Fox Emperor's personal guards. They risked their lives. Fight for our emperor. Ever since the Fox Emperor had left, the 300 Fox Emperor's personal guards had been silent. Even when they went out with Yun Yang to stop the sea race and blow up the sea race's mountain, they had remained silent. When they were free, they would sit in an orderly manner somewhere. They were either cultivating, or silently taking out their weapons and carefully wiping them over and over again. It was obvious that they were looking forward to this battle. To avenge their emperor. They had been looking forward to it. This was the greatest and final purpose of their existence in this world. Other than that, they had nothing else to live for. Now, the battle they had been waiting for had finally arrived. Whether they lived or died, they had no regrets. Even in death, their faces were calm. No, it was not accurate to say that they were calm. They were clearly indifferent. Compared to them, the Demon Emperor's personal guards were not at peace. Their emperor was sitting behind them, watching them fight. The emperor who was supposed to dominate the world and be invincible was now so weak. The Emperor must have been tricked. The Emperor was harmed. The Emperor was now at the end of his life. But we can't do anything about it. We accept the battle here to protect the Emperor's honor. We can't lose the battle against the other Emperor's personal guards. We can't lose. We must threaten the last bit of dignity of the Demon Emperor's personal guards. We still want to avenge the Emperor. But who was it that harmed the Emperor? For the sake of the Fox Emperor, the Fox Emperor's personal guards viewed the Demon Emperor and even the Demon Emperor's subordinates with deep hatred. They would not rest until they were dead. Even if they died, they were willing to die. But the Demon Emperor's personal guards did not have such a mentality. Their demeanor was completely different and they were at a disadvantage. Originally, the Demon Emperor's personal guards had the advantage in terms of numbers and were at an advantage. They should have been able to suppress the Fox Emperor. But the Fox Emperor's personal guards did not care whether they had the upper hand or the lower hand or the difference in strength. Today's battle was the last battle. The voice of seeking death had already suppressed the Demon Emperor's personal guards. But the Phoenix Empress that the Demon Emperor had been waiting for did not come. After a full 15 minutes, the 300 personal guards of the Fox Emperor had all fallen. 1,300 of the Demon Emperor's 2,000 personal guards had fallen. There were no casualties in this battle. In such a large-scale battle, they only fought each other and did not implicate any side. This was a personal grudge and had nothing to do with anyone or anything else. It was horrifying to the point that it was horrifying to look at. The battle had ended and everyone had yet to regain their senses. Only the word shocking could describe it. The Fox Empress had tears in her eyes as she walked out gently. She kept the remaining corpses of the Fox Emperor's personal guards. Every time she kept a corpse, she would bow deeply. This was the highest form of etiquette. The Empress bowed to her personal guards. This was the highest form of etiquette. The white-haired Demon Emperor sat on the back of the golden dragon. He slowly opened his eyes and smiled bitterly. Sister-in-law, I believe the Fox Emperor should be satisfied with this result. The Fox Empress said coldly, Nine-tailed White is naturally satisfied. With such a subordinate, he should be smiling in the underworld. But I do not dare to call you sister-in-law. I will return you to you. The Demon Emperor nodded his head slowly. His defeated face revealed a bitter smile. I know that I have no right or position to call you that. Later, when I see Nine-tailed White, I will personally apologize to him. I still owe him an apology. Chapter 1508. The Fox Empress harumphed coldly, filled with disdain. However, when she saw the Demon Emperor's withered face, she did not say anything worse. However, after she put away all the corpses of her personal guards, she turned around and left without looking back. She only left behind one sentence. I have done all that I have done for the Fox clan. Next, it's time for us to find a place to live with a clear conscience. We cannot stay in the Demon clan any longer. From now on, we will no longer be the Demon clan. After saying that, he swaggered off. The next moment, the Fox Empress and the Cat Queen appeared on the battlefield again. The swords in their hands shone with a cold light, and they started a massacre. And the sword light was directed at the Demon clan. A silver dragon saint shouted, Fox Empress and Cat Queen, you were born a demon, and you have been a demon all your life. Why are you turning against us? The Fox Empress and the Cat Queen laughed coldly. When you forced 9 lives and 9 tails to their deaths, did you ever think that they were also demons? Demons who had sacrificed so much for the Demon clan. With a few cold laughs, he had already disappeared without a trace. However, he had already changed directions and began his massacre once more. The Demon Emperor sat on the back of the golden dragon and looked at the gray sky in a daze. He muttered, Is the Phoenix Emperor not here yet? The few demon race sages and dragon race experts nearby were confused when they heard that. They clearly did not realize what had happened. But the Phoenix Emperor had not come yet, and it was even after the Demon Emperor had sent out a special summon. Something was not right. Maybe The Phoenix Emperor is in a tough battle and is being held back by the human experts. He cannot come. When the Golden Dragon Grand Elder said this, even he did not believe it. In the world, if the Phoenix Emperor wanted to leave, who could hold him back? Not a single one. The fact that he had not come after such a long time could only mean one thing: he did not want to come. That was all. The Demon Emperor suddenly laughed out loud. He laughed so hard that he could not catch his breath, but he did not stop laughing. During this short period of waiting, his life force did not improve because he had stopped fighting. Instead, it continued to decline. Now, he was truly on the verge of exhaustion. It was a state where his life force was completely exhausted, with only a tiny bit left. He could die at any moment. But correspondingly, his mind was unusually clear, unprecedentedly clear. His memory was especially good. It was to the extent that practically all the major and minor events in his life had been recalled by him. Scene after scene rose and fell like a white steed flashing past a crevice, and many of the things that were wrong and unreasonable were clearly displayed before his eyes, as clear as a blazing fire. The Demon Emperor smiled bitterly. He was laughing at himself. Why had his brain never worked so well before? The past flashed past his mind like a clear stream, quietly flowing by. All the mysteries, tricks, and illogicalities had all been answered at this moment. Brother Feng. As expected of the wisest person in the world. The Demon Emperor heaved a long sigh. His voice was filled with admiration, without the slightest bit of resentment. I, the leader of the demon race, Dragon Emperor Yulong Tian, have been tricked by you my entire life and never had the slightest suspicion. It's my foolishness, but it's my honor. The Demon Emperor guffawed until he coughed blood. Send another order, ask him to come here. The Demon Emperor said, tell him that I don't hate him, not at all. I just want to talk to him now and pour my heart out. The few dragon saints left immediately to search for the Phoenix Emperor. The Demon Emperor looked at Yunyang and said faintly, Lord Supreme Cloud, are you interested in listening to my life? Yunyang smiled and said, of course I'd like to. I'll head over first then, Shangguan Lingxiu said. All right. I'll stay here and chat with your majesty. I'm really curious about your majesty's legendary life, said Yunyang. Shangguan Lingxiu glanced at him in disdain and rolled her eyes before she left. Was Yunyang interested in the Demon Emperor's life? Interest my *SS. From the Demon Emperor's behavior and Yunyang's own knowledge of the demon race, he had already guessed about 50 to 60% of the connection between the Dragon Emperor and the Phoenix Emperor. The Dragon Emperor was obviously a shield placed by the Phoenix Emperor. All the good and bad things were shouldered by the Dragon Emperor alone. The Dragon Emperor gained fame while the Phoenix Emperor gained tangible benefits. It was only now that the Dragon Emperor realized the truth. He knew that everything he held in his hands was an illusion. He had been manipulated by the Phoenix Emperor all his life, thinking that they were good friends for life. How could he have known that the Phoenix Emperor had treated him like a tool? In spite of this, Yunyang could not ignore it and he dared not say that he did not want to listen. Now that the Dragon Emperor was about to die, how could he maximize the benefits of his death? He could even use his death to settle this hopeless battle. Of course, he had to seize the opportunity to build a good relationship. With the Demon Emperor's withdrawal from the battle, almost all the dragon race's combat power slowly gathered here. Without the dragon race, the pinnacle of the demon race, the pressure on the bound of universe's side was reduced. It was especially so now that the Phoenix Emperor was unwilling to show himself. On the Sea Tribe's side, the Sea Emperor's ability was greatly reduced due to his heavy injuries and Prime Minister Turtle was dead. It was a leaderless situation, which naturally made the human race's battle line much more secure. Although Yunyang knew that this was only temporary and that the dragon race would still have to participate in the battle once the Demon Emperor died, it was already a great advantage for the humans to be able to temporarily trap almost half of the demon race's high-end combat power here. What the humans lacked now was time. Only by dragging it out until the Tiger Emperor and the rest could the humans have a chance of winning. Therefore, Yin Yang hoped that this situation could be maintained for as long as possible. Although doing so would also implicate him, Ji Lingxi, Shangguan Lingxiu, Dongfang Haoran, and the rest were still free and could come to their aid. Having lost the dragon race's hundreds of saints as their high-end opponents, these people were invincible and could greatly reduce the pressure on the human race. Furthermore, Yin Yang had overstepped the limit twice. First, he had forcefully assisted the water force to ambush the demon army, and second, he had used his life's energy to accelerate the growth of the mountain range. He had actually suffered a great deal of damage. Now, he was just barely holding on. Was it not better to take the opportunity to recover his energy? Therefore, Yin Yang really wished that the Demon Emperor could chat with him, the longer the better. If he could chat for 3 to 5 to 7 days, the outcome of this battle might be reversed. The longer he dragged it out, the higher the chances of Emperor Rock and the rest rushing over, and the stronger his side would be. The only threat was the Phoenix Emperor. Although his ability had increased greatly, at least he was not much of a threat at the moment, and his whereabouts were still unknown. Yin Yang secretly calculated the current combat power of both sides and was surprised to find that only the Deer Emperor, the Horse Emperor, and the Serpent Emperor were still holding on the side of the Demon race and the Sea race. The Sea race had the advantage in numbers, but the Sea Emperor, their ultimate combat power, was in a half-crippled state. The rest of the Whale King, Shark King, and King Deng were only high-level saints, so they were not a threat. Such a situation was something that Yin Yang could not even dream of. The Demon Emperor smiled faintly and opened his eyes. Looking at the fiery battlefield, he said with a smile, "I've been willful all my life, and most of it was for today. I didn't expect to be willful again at such a critical moment." Yin Yang, along with the saint experts of the demon race and dragon race, understood what he meant. The Demon Emperor knew very well that he was telling a story here and delaying so many experts from participating in the battle. It was not only detrimental to the demon race's millennium-long plan, but it could also cause a destructive blow. However, he still did it. If he was willful, then so be it. It was the end anyway. If I didn't keep them here, what would you do? Would you still be interested in listening to my rambling? The Demon Emperor asked Yin Yang with great interest. Yin Yang smiled and said, "I've always thought that your majesty is arbitrary and that your words are the law. It's obvious that your majesty is a sensible person. If your majesty wishes to recall the past, how can there be no price? At the very least, I'll immediately snatch the oceanic divine staff and suppress the sea race. This is my top priority and goal. The Phoenix Emperor is guilty and doesn't dare to come over. With your majesty's current strength, including the surrounding defenses, you can't stop me from snatching the oceanic divine staff or doing anything for me." Yin Yang smiled calmly and said, "So, let's benefit each other. After all, it's up to you to decide who will benefit more from this conversation. However, I'm still inclined to listen to your majesty's story." The Demon Emperor shook his head and chuckled. "Is it because I'm lamenting that the Phoenix Emperor is the wisest and that Supreme Cloud is unwilling? Of course, this conversation is beneficial to all of you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here." Yin Yang's expression did not change. "It seems that your majesty's mind is extremely clear. However, our situation is still not optimistic." The Demon Emperor said faintly, "That can't be helped. Human beings are too weak. But it's not that you and Dongfang are too weak. Facing the current dire situation, I believe that Supreme Cloud knows what to do. The reason why humans have fallen to this state is all because the Crimson Soul Mountain is too sturdy. It's just that you, the pinnacle of human strength, have protected the ordinary humans so well." Yin Yang smiled noncommittally and did not speak. The demon race. Every fighting demon knows from birth that the ultimate mission of the demon race is to counterattack the bound of universe. Therefore, every demon race citizen's entire life is a process of survival of the fittest. There's no peace to speak of. Those who can survive are either cunning or strong enough. The demon emperor said tiredly, those who are talented in cultivation are constantly in danger of death since they start cultivating. If they don't become stronger, they'll die. At least in this aspect, they're completely different from you humans. Therefore, once the Crimson Soul Mountain no longer exists, the demon race will have the absolute advantage. It's irreversible. If the Crimson Soul Mountain exists forever, then humans will naturally be at peace. This is also the fundamental reason why we're willing to sacrifice the lives of 20 billion martial artists to carry out the strategy of annihilation. You're only able to live peacefully in the bound of universe because of the favoritism of the gods and rulers. Only you humans don't cherish this gift. What's wrong with us replacing it? Yin Yang had initially planned to play along and listen to the Demon Emperor's last words. He did not expect the Demon Emperor to be so insistent and talk nonsense. He could not help but ask, why don't we humans cherish it? Chapter 1509. The Demon Emperor sneered. You humans occupy the most suitable place for cultivation. You humans have the body and meridians that are the most suitable for cultivation compared to any other race in this world. You humans have countless cultivation methods passed down by your predecessors that you can cultivate without creating them yourself. But why is your combat power not as great as the demon races? You humans are too lazy. You humans are too lazy. Too greedy for comfort. Since you don't want to improve, why not let us, who are more proactive, replace you? The Demon Emperor spoke with conviction. Wrong. Very wrong. Yin Yang said faintly, one of the fundamental purposes of us conquering the world is to let our descendants live a more comfortable and smoother life. If every generation is as hard as you, what's the use of us conquering the world? This is not a reason for you to invade. God has never been biased. It seems to give us a comfortable environment, but it also gives us a weak body. It gives you a harsh environment, but it also gives you the ability to hunt. Yin Yang smiled faintly. Demon Emperor, if these are your last words, I think you don't have to say any more. I'm not interested in listening to this. Perhaps I can lend you a hand and meet the Fox Emperor, the Cat Emperor, and the Eagle Emperor sooner, if you still have the face to see them. The Demon Sovereign was stunned for a moment. After pondering for a long time, he finally laughed again. So I'm still talking to myself, thinking that I'm infallible. The injustice and grievances of our demon clan, indeed, cannot be told to your human clan. It's natural that you're not interested in listening. Yin Yang smiled. What's the use of telling you the hatred of the human race? It's useless. The Demon Emperor laughed. Supreme Cloud, do you know that my temper has become exceptionally good at times like this? I even want to talk to you a little longer. Yin Yang beamed. Sure, I hope to talk to your majesty a little longer too. 3 to 5 days is fine too, I'll accompany you. The Demon Emperor laughed uncontrollably. As he laughed, the Demon Emperor's gaze became lost as he murmured, back then, the brothers were all together. He suddenly fell silent. His gaze was distant. Yin Yang was not impatient. He waited patiently for the Demon Emperor's follow-up. The experts of the demon race had formed a formation spontaneously. It was an oddly shaped formation that spread from top to bottom. From afar, it looked like a stairway to heaven. All the participating demon clan experts transformed into their true forms. At a glance, they were neat and tidy, and the scene was solemn and solemn. The entire place was filled with a heavy oppressive atmosphere. The demon sovereign woke up from his deep thoughts and said indifferently, "This is the heaven stairway." Since ancient times, only the Demon Emperor and Demon Empress would receive such treatment. Do you understand? Yin Yang said solemnly. Yin Yang has unexpectedly received such an honor. Should I say that I'm overwhelmed by the favor? Now that the heaven stairway has been erected, I wonder if your majesty has any unfinished business. From afar, the Ocean Emperor's angry roar could be heard. During the great battle, at the moment of life and death, your majesty Demon Emperor, what are you doing? He was too far away, and he was being pursued by Lingxi. He had no idea what was happening on the other side. What was worse was that he did not know Lingxi's background at all. He felt that he had targeted a fatal flaw and attacked with all his might, but his current combat power was at most 50% of his pinnacle state. He was still a notch weaker than Lingxi. It looked like he had succeeded in his attack, but the moment the mystical light flashed, he retaliated with an extreme counterattack, dealing a huge blow to the Ocean Emperor. Then, he began to be pursued by Lingxi, living in constant fear. Just as he was being pursued to the point where he had nowhere to run and it was getting increasingly difficult for him to cope, he was surprised to see so many experts of the demon race stop fighting and gather together in a concave shape. The Ocean Emperor was furious and cursed aloud. Tens of thousands of lives are being lost every blink of an eye now, but all of you are sitting there as if nothing has happened. Holding a meeting? How could King trick me like this? The Ocean Emperor had thought that he could take advantage of the ambush to finish off the human's top combat power, but he did not expect his target to possess a special technique. Apart from being ambushed, he had suffered a number of injuries and was being pursued relentlessly by Lingxi. He could not stop complaining. This was only because he had the help of the Sea Clan experts around him that he did not suffer any more serious injuries. If this continued, the Sea Clan would suffer a great loss. What are you demons doing here? The Ocean Emperor roared angrily. To fight. I'm really. Lingxi darted over like a bolt of lightning, and the pursuit of death continued. The Ocean Emperor retreated step by step, getting further and further away from them. He could not help but panic, foaming at the mouth, but there was nothing he could do. A bunch of B*****stards. A bunch of B*****stards. How could there be such an ally in this world? At the most critical moment, the Demon Emperor had gathered a large number of high-level saints for a meeting and were queuing up. The other leader, the Phoenix Emperor, had disappeared. Then what was the point of launching this apocalypse strategy? Did you send all of my Sea Clan here to die? I've never seen a demon being tricked like this. The Ocean Emperor did not see that Yun Yang was the closest to the Dragon Emperor. Otherwise, he would have suspected that this apocalypse strategy was actually a show that the demon and human clans had teamed up to annihilate the Sea Clan. The Shark King bellowed, shattering jade. Let's kill this woman first. Mobilizing a large group of Sea Clan experts to charge at Lingxi in a suicidal manner, the Shark King was so angry that he was spitting blood. The demon race was really insignificant. What did a bunch of beasts know about strategy? We've already charged over, but you've come up with such a ridiculous plan. F***ck. How he wished he could just charge back like a tidal wave. However, under the coordinated attacks of the human experts, the experts on the Sea Emperor's side were pushed further and further away from the demon race. Gradually, they were completely separated from the demon race. Yun Yang narrowed his eyes and said faintly, "Your Majesty seems to be unenthusiastic about this plan all of a sudden?" The Demon Emperor's expression was calm, but his tone was casual. "But you humans are still at an absolute disadvantage, aren't you? There's a saying in the human world that a man's words are kind when he's about to die, and a bird's cry when it's about to die is sorrowful. I wonder if your Majesty has any thoughts or suggestions on this?" The dragon race that was arranged into a stairway to heaven glared at Yun Yang, wishing that they could slice Yun Yang into pieces. The Demon Emperor, on the other hand, was calm, not at all offended. He even chuckled softly. As the conversation went on, the Demon Emperor's expression grew darker. Suddenly, he plucked a bead off his crown and stuffed it into his mouth. He said with a melancholy smile, "This is the dragon race's heirloom. I thought that I'd never have to use it in this lifetime and planned to pass it on. I didn't expect that I'd have to use it now." As the bead entered his mouth, the Demon Emperor's weak life force surged and grew denser. It seemed that his life force had recovered by at least 30%. Before the Golden Dragon Elder and the others had the time to rejoice, they saw the Demon Emperor's aura gradually weaken again, and it seemed to be going out of control. Yin Yang had suffered too many injuries before this. Whether it was his meridians, divine sense, or life force, they were all damaged due to various reasons. Long illness made the patient a good doctor, and Yin Yang was the one who knew his wounds better. Through this period of close contact, he realized that the Demon Emperor's body was like an extra-large funnel. No matter how much life force was pumped into it, it was futile and could not be stored. Even if Yin Yang were to provide the Demon Emperor with spiritual chi of vitality, it would not solve the root of the problem. As time passed, the Demon Emperor would evaporate completely. In addition, the rate of depletion was unheard of. The Demon Emperor had recovered 30% of his life force after eating this strange pearl. This 30% life force was equivalent to the life force of a high-level sage. However, with the current rate of depletion, it would not take more than 4 hours for the bead to be depleted again. Since the bead was a treasure of heritage, its effect might not be as simple as just replenishing life force. After consuming the bead, the Demon Emperor's energy was greatly restored. Although his life force was still draining rapidly, his dignified aura had recovered a little as well. His eyes that had regained their luster stared at Yin Yang. Supreme Cloud, are you still interested in knowing the history of the demon race's rise and fall? About my love and hatred for so many years? Yin Yang laughed. Of course I am. Chatting with your majesty is a pleasure for me. I believe that no one in the demon race, let alone the human race, has the guts to talk to your majesty like this. The Demon Emperor smiled, a strange glow on his face as he said, Supreme Cloud is indeed extraordinary. Since Supreme Cloud doesn't give up, come with me. Before his words echoed in the air, he waved his right hand. A holy light flashed, and Yin Yang and the Demon Emperor disappeared at the same time. The Great Elder of the Golden Dragon, the Great Elder of the Silver Dragon, the Great Elder of the Black Dragon, the Great Elder of the White Dragon, and the Great Elder of the Azure Dragon disappeared at the same time. And these 5 Great Elders of the Dragon Clan were the most loyal supporters of the Demon Emperor. Although the people above had disappeared, they were not completely traceless. A strange barrier had appeared at the place where they had disappeared. Yin Yang and the Demon Emperor were obviously within this barrier. Yin Yang felt his vision blur before he realized that he was already on a lush green grassland. His eyes were filled with green, and he looked relaxed and carefree. However, on this vast grassland, besides himself, there were 6 other people, including the Demon Emperor, who were standing a little further away. If it were not for the fact that Yin Yang was certain that the Demon Emperor was not in a good condition and could die at any time, he would have suspected that the Demon Emperor was plotting against him. After all, the sudden turn of events was too sudden. In this strange realm, the Demon Emperor seemed to be in a better state. He stood with his arms behind his back, his face devoid of emotion. It was probably because the vitality provided by the orb that he had consumed previously had not dissipated completely. In addition to the environment and atmosphere of this realm, he looked like a king who had descended upon the world. The Demon Emperor stared at Yin Yang for a moment and said faintly, "This is the world of my memory." Originally, the memory could only be viewed in the form of images, but the orb that I have consumed is the Dragon Clan's divine orb of Tao. No matter how bad the situation is, it can still save my life. However, even after consuming this orb, it still can't save me from the misfortune of death. Therefore, I've decided to activate its other use, to materialize my memory and let you have a good look at my life. Then, I'll entrust some of my unfinished business to you. The Demon Emperor stared at Yin Yang deeply for a moment. In exchange, I hope that you can promise me one thing. In this entire world, only you can give me some confidence in this matter. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.